Chapter 349. Luo Nan's mind was still a mess even after being in a daze for a long time. The hour hand was already pointing to 4 o'clock. Another hour passed unknowingly. Luo Nan was in a bad mood. His mind was originally in an extremely clear state, but now it had been stirred into a pot of porridge. This won't do. Luo Nan tried to sever his terrible state of mind. He thought of He Yuan's teachings and immediately murmured, "Sharpening the blade won't delay the chopping of wood. Sharpening the blade won't delay the chopping of wood. Sharpening the blade won't delay the chopping of wood." He recited this proverb over a dozen times like a chant, forcefully replacing his chaotic thoughts. In the end, he was a bit tired. Luo Nan used the back of his hand to press his forehead. His state of mind gradually calmed down. He didn't have any new experiences, but his turbid thoughts gradually became clear. Sister Yuan's incantation was quite considerate. Actually, he recited the incantation 1,000 times and thought of 10,000 countermeasures. In the end, it all boiled down to one sentence. "You're not an extraordinary." In recent months, he had followed He Yuan to grasp the world order in and out of the psychic wave network. He had followed Bamboo Pole to learn the notes of the most important people in the world. Wasn't this principle what he had learned? To put it bluntly, the inner world was a simple society built by a group of inhumans who had awakened their abilities. Even though they were influenced by the secular world, money, resources, and connections played a large role. In the end, personal strength was still the most important. Why did Bamboo Pole want him to rely on Her Majesty Empress Wu? It was because Her Majesty Empress Wu was an extraordinary. Her strength was profound, her resources were abundant, and she was revered by others. She could handle matters that Luo Nan was unable to handle, and she could solve problems that Luo Nan was unable to solve. In this sense, Her Majesty Empress Wu could be swapped with any other extraordinary. The result would be the same. At most, the difference would be whether or not they were easy to serve. Of course, if Luo Nan himself was an extraordinary, then there would be no need for a swap. Most things would be impossible to happen. Even if they did happen, they would quickly dissolve. This was the special status of extraordinaries. If Luo Nan could solve it himself, he naturally wouldn't want to do it for someone else. But the reality was that he was still far from being an extraordinary. Right now, he could barely be considered a blunt blade. He needed to grind the blade to an unstoppable edge, and he needed to smash a lot of hard work. He Yuan used the proverb, "Sharpening the blade won't delay the chopping of wood," to advise him. She was mostly worried that Luo Nan would lose his patience and confidence due to the difficult and tedious process. Luo Nan wasn't that frivolous and useless, but it would be a lie to say that he was extremely patient. He was willing to put in blood, sweat, and tears for this sharpening knife. No matter how hard it was, he could support it. But if this process was a clumsy, slow, and meticulous process, he would not be able to stand it. Her grandfather, who was on the verge of death, could not wait any longer, and neither could the ferocious enemy. He didn't want to leave behind irreparable regrets, and he didn't want his head to be chopped off by a powerful enemy before he succeeded. Harder, faster. This was the cultivation rhythm that Luo Nan hoped for. To do this, he could only rely on two things. One was formatting theory and the corresponding coupling method. The other was the internal cultivation method that Gym Master Xiao had imparted to him, which was to nurture one's essence and qi. The latter was personally guided by Hall Master Xiao, so the route was clear and orderly. There was no need to worry about making a mistake, making it the most efficient. However, this kind of internal refinement technique, be it the breathing or the opening of acupoints, was very particular about fire control and could not be rash. Just like this moment. Luo Nan had just brought the eye's orifice to perfection, and it was no longer suitable for him to make hasty movements. He needed to calm down for several days before planning his next move. Then there was only one thing left for him to figure out and achieve some results. Formatting theory. Luo Nan knew very well that the astonishing progress of his internal refinement cultivation was due to the grinding and influence of formatting theory, transforming the powerful potential energy of the vast glacial ocean. Now that the cultivation of the eye's orifice was complete, he still needed to rely on formatting theory for the next step of cultivation. No matter how one looked at it, formatting theory was his foundation. He couldn't slack off in the related research, and there was a state that was the most suitable for pondering over formatting theory. The time was 4:10. Luonan looked at his daily schedule through the hexayear. There was still around an hour before the normal morning exercise time. Luonan estimated the time limit, but he didn't get up. He just squinted his eyes and silently cried out, "Come out." The void chains trembled, and a pulling force rose out of thin air. It pulled his soul out of his body with a jolt. Yes, what Luonan needed to do was to go into an out-of-body state. Formatting theory itself was flawed, and the hidden dangers were great. The unconventional increase in soul strength led to an imbalance between body and soul. And the time when the increase was the fiercest was often when the soul was in an out-of-body state. Ever since the incident at Frost River Reality, Luonan's situation with the imbalance between body and soul had reached a critical level. He had no choice but to seal this method and not use it again. But was formatting theory still formatting theory if it couldn't increase soul strength? Luonan had inherited his grandfather's theory. He had the desire to reform and perfect it. This was a process of constant trial and error. How could he make mistakes? Naturally, he had to make a mistake in order to correct it. In the past, Luonan's body and soul were imbalanced. His condition was critical, and he lost the space to make mistakes. But now his cultivation had advanced, and his body gear was constantly rotating. His foundation had become more solid, and his ability to deal with risks had greatly increased. Some things needed to be put on the agenda. If he didn't act now, would he have to wait for death to come? Would he have to close his eyes and wait for death? Luonan didn't want to close his eyes and wait for death. He wanted to open his eyes and look at the world. He wanted to use the perspective of formatting theory to make scientific judgments and then use practice to verify the results. He pushed forward layer by layer like this, using the greatest effort and the fastest speed to climb to the level of extraordinary. I can do it. I must do it. Luonan's conviction gradually became clear. The soul body floating outside his body was like a fish. It gently swayed and submerged into the boundless and boundless sea of the mind. The range of his senses instantly expanded tenfold, 100-fold. His thoughts stirred slightly, and he looked at his seemingly sleeping fleshly body. He also swept his gaze over his silent and sleepless elder. His soul body then flashed and submerged into the void. Without the burden of his fleshly body, the movement speed of his soul body only depended on the method and technique he used to interfere with space. It wasn't strange for him to travel several kilometers with a single thought. In the blink of an eye, Luonan was far away from the community he was in. He went deep into the depths of the metropolis that was about to wake up. His mind wandered through the metropolis. The feeling of familiarity and strangeness increased layer by layer. In the past, every time Luonan's soul left his body, it was always during critical and pressing moments. It was rare for him to purely observe and feel like this. The life sketches of all living beings appeared one after another within the range of his senses. Together, they formed a deep starry sky that continued to expand. The living starry sky and the true night sky interweaved to form a labyrinth on the mental and material planes. There might even be unknown treasures hidden within. This was an experience that was hard to come by under normal circumstances. Luonan wasn't bewitched by the labyrinth. He quickly confirmed his direction and moved like a ghost in the night. He was hidden and then disappeared, but he advanced in a straight line. He didn't avoid tall buildings, flying cars, or light rails. He passed right through them. It was 4:20 in the morning. A mere 10 minutes later, Luonan's soul body was already flying above the Pingjiang district, the campus of Acumen College, and the towering buildings of Cloud City Water Village entered the range of his senses. Chapter 350. Luonan was shocked after confirming the time. His aunt's house was approximately 80 kilometers away from Acumen College. Given the city's speed limit, The flying car would arrive in an hour. He had only spent 10 minutes just now. In other words, the flying speed of his soul body was close to 500 kilometers per hour. Luo Nen had gotten a rough sense of the flying speed of his soul when he first realized the out-of-body state. He just felt that it was fast, but he never expected it to be this fast. It must be known that he was just casually flying. He was far from reaching his limits. It was completely possible for him to increase his speed by a large margin if he truly exerted his strength. Perhaps it was catalyzed by his progress during this period of time. The radius of the main city area of Xia City and the satellite cities was no more than 300 to 400 kilometers. In other words, he could easily reach any location in Xia City within an hour. It was also possible for him to travel a full circle in Xia City in a single night. He could even travel several thousand kilometers. This was the marvels of the out-of-body state. Luo Nen just didn't know if there would be any problems with the order frame formed by the God Gear and Body Gear if his soul body was too far away. Luo Nen immediately slowed down the flying speed of his soul. He divided a bit of his mental energy to sense the changes in his fleshly body 80 kilometers away. The out-of-body state had quite a large effect on the order frame of Luo Nan's body and soul. The pressure of soul strength on his body was practically zero, but it had also separated from the external neuron. It was no longer the thick and orderly structure of a vast ocean of icebergs. The God Gear didn't live up to its name. Luo Nen tried to activate the heart lantern of the eye's orifice, but there was no response. Only now was he convinced that a corresponding material carrier was needed in order to effectively interfere with reality on the mental plane. It was just like Luo Nan's order frame. No matter how strong the God Gear was, it was useless without the coordination of the body gear. Luo Nen couldn't help but feel a bit disappointed. This way, the actual use of the out-of-body state was rather limited. He needed to prepare for a rainy day. He needed to make a few more human-faced arachnids for backup before the Wraith sign returned. Luo Nen pondered over this matter, but he had some doubts. Were mentally enhanced ability users like Old Man Yu and Mr. Bai people who undoubtedly possessed the ability of out-of-body state? Were their out-of-body states the same? If not, how did they display their abilities normally? He thought left and right, but he was unable to grasp the gist of it. He wanted to give He Yuan a suggestion to add an out-of-body state application course. In any case, it was impossible to solve this problem tonight. Luo Nen calmed his mind, discarding the useless, distracting thoughts. His soul body flickered, and when it reappeared, he was already in the air above the buildings of Cloud City Water Village. He locked onto the observation platform above Ocean Sky Cloud City, and he floated down. At 4:00 in the morning, there would naturally be no one on the observation deck. It was cold and silent. Though Luo Nan's soul strength did not affect the material plane, it collided with the consciousness of a living being on the mental plane. In the central crystal pillar of Ocean Sky Cloud City, the mutant devil ray that was originally suspended in the water and resting suddenly became excited. Its huge flat body swayed, and as it spun in the air habitually, it was like a huge drill that was rapidly moving upwards. It rapidly advanced towards the top of the crystal pillar, where the heavenly ocean lake was located on the observation deck. Since there was such a ferocious creature entrenched here, Versky Cloud couldn't let his guard down. Every night, there were professionals on duty. Inside and outside the crystal pillar, there were also different types of surveillance cameras at work. As soon as the devil ray moved, its special posture triggered the alarm of the surveillance system. Groans could be heard everywhere in the building's central control room. This monster is going crazy again. It's hundreds of thousands just for one round of trouble. Hurry up and release the baffle. The so-called baffle was a temporary defensive device installed by Cloud City Water Village after the devil ray smashed through the tempered glass at the bottom of the heavenly ocean lake. It had no other use than to prevent the devil ray from smashing a huge hole in the heavenly ocean lake. Luo Nen could feel the chaos within the building. He felt quite embarrassed, so he used psychic waves to support himself and pacify the devil ray's restless emotions. The devil ray's intelligence was passable. It had once been suppressed by the high-imitation human-faced arachnid, but under Luo Nan's control, it felt all sorts of novel, interesting, and extremely powerful states. As a result, it was both respectful and fearful of Luo Nan's special psychic wave frequency. Right now, it was already ranked as a staff member of the societal format diagram. According to the definition of the order, it could be called a believer or a follower. Luo Nan's telepathic thoughts descended, and the devil ray didn't dare to resist. It immediately stopped its momentum and turned its body. It saw the fish and shrimps that were fleeing in all directions, alarmed by its actions. It immediately swallowed a bunch of them and let out some blood over at Fairski Cloud City. There was no need to mention just how great of a loss the devil ray, which had woken up in the middle of the night, would bring to the relevant parties. Luo Nan's soul body stayed on the viewing platform, observing the wetland jungle to the north of Acumen College. He remained motionless for a long time. There was gear within the jungle, but the viewing platform was over a dozen kilometers away from the wetland jungle. The sky was dark and silent, making it difficult for ordinary people to see it. Luo Nan could see it. A distance of over a dozen kilometers had already far exceeded the limits of Luo Nan's mental senses when his body and soul were one. Back then, he had used the coupling of the God gear and body gear to stimulate the heart lantern of the eye's orifice to rub his psychic light and illuminate the earth below. Only then was he able to bring gear within the jungle into his clairvoyance. Now that his mind had wandered to this point, the coupling of the God gear and body gear was no longer possible. However, after his out-of-body state, the range of his senses had increased explosively by 10 times. He was able to see clearly under pure observation. The problem was that no matter how much he observed, it was hard to trigger the wondrous sensation of gear being the eye of heaven and earth, the universe grand format. This result was not unexpected at all. From the moment Luo Nan's heart lantern illuminated gear, he truly understood that the wondrous aspects contained within gear could not be seen by the naked eye. Mental senses could not illuminate it clearly. Only the two modes of sight and mental senses, through coupling, could cross and grind each other. Only then could one touch the reality behind the surface and determine how the law and order operated, transformed, and nurtured within the void of heaven and earth. Pure mental senses were still lacking in meaning. If it were possible, Luo Nan obviously wished to truly go to the viewing platform and observe gear with clairvoyance day and night. He wanted to feel and comprehend the wondrous aspects within. But this week, whether it was the viewing platform or the interior of gear, there were demonic shadows flickering one after another. It was a bad mood. Whatever. Let's just get closer and observe. Luo Nan's out-of-body state of mind had absolutely not chosen this place on a whim. He had a clear goal and plan. His soul body flew away from Ocean Sky Cloud City, and with another thought, he shifted to the wetland jungle. Gear was right in front of him. Right now, the lights within the building were completely extinguished. The pitch-black cave was completely devoid of people. Entering this place at this time, and in this sort of situation, required a bit of courage. Well, if someone really did come, Luo Nan did not mind testing the quality of this fellow. Unfortunately, there was no one. Luo Nan's soul body passed through the wall and entered the interior of gear. His mental senses naturally covered every space and every nook and cranny of the 12 floors, leaving nothing out. He could do all of this when his soul and body were one. He could do it even better because he had the heart lantern of the eye's orifice, which was more suited to the environment of gear. But it was still the same old saying. There were people in front of him, and there were eyes behind his head. He could not act willfully. Only when his internal refinement was successful and he reckoned that he could resist the pressure of the explosive increase in his soul's strength could this matter be accomplished. Chapter 351. The wetland jungle during the early hours of the morning was perhaps the quietest time of the day. The activity of the birds and beasts in the forest had already dropped to the lowest level. Most of the sounds transmitted to the interior of the building had been isolated. In such an environment, Even the slightest abnormality would be magnified, giving people an unusual feeling. Luo Nan's soul body remained motionless as he carefully experienced it. A dozen or so seconds later, he was convinced that the chill was not an illusion. It even possessed a certain mode of operation. It was like a spiraling strand of air that traveled back and forth within the building of gear. Moreover, as the chill circulated, the fine dripping sound of the building of gear accompanied it from beginning to end. Perhaps it was because he had heard it for a long time, but he always felt that there was a subtle connection between the two. It was so subtle that it could give birth to an illusion at any time. Luo Nan's out-of-body state allowed the precision of his mental senses to climb to the highest peak. Otherwise, let alone this connection, he might not even be able to detect the hidden chill. That's right. That's right. Luo Nan liked this sort of discovery. This detail was quite in line with his research and judgment of the mysteries of gear. It was a good start for his exploration of the spirit wander. He nearly stayed here to do further research, but his brain heated up for a few seconds. In the end, he remembered the main objective of today's operation. He could only suppress his impulse and make his incorporeal soul body penetrate through the ground. He advanced toward the central control room on the 4th underground floor. The feeling of using a soul body to penetrate through walls and into the ground was very marvelous. His soul body relied on mental senses. Ordinary matter would not cause any interference, but Luo Nan was used to the senses of a human body. He could not help but have some knowledge obstructions in his mind. In his eyes, the earth and steel structure formed layer after layer of shadows. They were like thick clouds that assaulted his face. At first glance, they looked majestic, but when he collided with them, they vanished like smoke. It was to the point where he nearly lost his sense of direction. He was unable to distinguish whether he was in the sky or in the ground. This sort of feeling triggered a memory from the bottom of his heart. A week ago, a similar scene had occurred, but it was more realistic. The grayish-white clouds penetrated with a bloody glow, and they assaulted his face, just like now. They presented him with an inconceivably vast world. Today, Luo Nan quietly came precisely to retrace that inconceivable experience. He had wanted to do this a long time ago. It was just that the Xia City branch kept a close eye on him during this period of time due to the mess that couldn't be cleaned up. He was practically protected 24 hours a day. He was sent to school and picked up after school. Shuele hated that he could not leave the campus at all. When he returned home, there was a sentry shift outside in the middle of the night. Needless to say, Gear's construction had always been in the middle of construction. Every passerby's horse powder and ink covered the field. Inside and outside, there were surveillance cameras. There really were eyes on all sides. They couldn't split themselves into two. They simply couldn't find an opportunity. Now that he finally had the qualifications to leave his body, he naturally came over to try it out. Up until now, the development of the situation was very much to his liking. Because he wanted to trace back, he had purposely gone to Ocean Sky Cloud City to observe from afar. And after arriving at Gear, the first place he chose was the starting point of his previous experience, the central control room located on the 4th underground floor. Luo Nan had already seen it yesterday afternoon. The central control room had been renovated and a brand new console had been installed. The holographic projection showed that the equipment was in a standby state right now. Only 2 or 3 electronic lights flickered. Luo Nan stood before the operating console. The memories in his mind were like wave after wave of returning tides at the mouth of the sea. They surged and surged passionately, causing what was originally a short scene to be like a vast expanse of space, boundless and endless. Luo Nan was clearly a soul body, but he still instinctively took a deep breath.
Come.
Now is the time to witness a miracle. Luo Nan's telepathic thoughts touched the console, and he extended a force towards the inner layer to capture the feeling within his memories. The console was ice cold. The electronic lights flickered. Then there was no more response. Luo Nan waited for a full 20 seconds before he dared to confirm that his attempt at tracing back had met with the most ruthless failure. How could this be? Luo Nan still remembered the experience of that day. He still remembered the entire process of being moved from the central control room to the tree hole 1,000 meters away. He remembered that he saw the console being blasted into ruins back then. That fellow called Tank had used this to destroy the fire safety module. He tried to reactivate it, so he used the external neuron to connect directly to the underlying system. When he connected to the energy module, a chaotic cloud suddenly flew about.
Huh?
That's right. The external neuron. Luo Nan's soul body circled in place 5 or 6 times, but he still found it hard to dispel his feelings of vexation. He was truly muddle-headed. The external neuron was extremely likely to be the primer, the key, in the situation back then. Otherwise, wouldn't it be possible for anyone to come in and pry into the astonishing secrets of gear? His mother, who designed gear all those years ago, and the one who possessed the external neuron, used this train of thought as insurance. This was the most reasonable choice. He just wanted to open the treasure, but he forgot the key. Fine. This trip was a waste. He would look for an opportunity next time. Hold on. It was only 4:30 in the morning. There was still time. With the flying speed of his soul body, he could completely make a round trip. Luo Nan's soul body flew up with a single thought. It passed through the layers of earth, stone, and metal structures, directly leaping into the air above the building of gear. Luo Nan originally wanted to leave immediately, but he suddenly felt something as his soul body traveled through the interior of the building. The chill that lingered in the air seemed to cut into many parts of his soul body, rippling with ripples. The feeling was quite marvelous. Luo Nan couldn't help but think of the question from before. His soul body stopped, and his mental senses naturally covered the entire building. He took the entire structure of gear into his heart. There seemed to be no end to the marvels of gear. On the outside, gear was a tiny component that was seamlessly embedded within the heaven and earth format. On the inside, there were subtle and exquisite components. Together, they formed a harmonious whole. According to the direction of Luo Nan's recent studies, gear could be described as a precise operating mechanical system. Luo Nan had been observing endlessly over the past few days, dividing them one by one. He was able to roughly discern that there was a central control room, an underground laboratory, an above-ground laboratory, an activity room, an atrium, and other relatively independent areas within this building. They were all components of this machine, and they realized their respective functions. The machine was endlessly operating, but each component was fixed. This created a problem. If the components didn't move, then what moved? A proper engineer might go crazy when faced with this problem, but Luo Nan had been continuously influenced by the way of thinking of the inner world over the past few days. He very naturally switched to a different train of thought. If the components didn't move, then what moved was some sort of supernatural power. Some knowledge of the mystic arts was involved in the cultural classes he attended. For example, Eastern diagrams, Western magical arrays, and a few other similar things. Ability users used materials, temperature, air pressure, topography, and so on to set things up. They were able to draw upon the flow of energy to construct the marvelous structure of condensed air. The researchers of the society even added the legendary 8 formation diagram of Wuho as a reference. Luo Nan didn't care about the 8 formation diagram of Wuho. He was just driven by a new thought that popped up in his mind. He flew up a certain distance and looked down from a distance. He scanned the building from the inside to the outside several times, using this to open up a new train of thought. He thought, isn't that coldness growing in the dark the flow of energy? According to what he learned from worker Zhai over the past few days, a normal mechanical system should have a prime mover providing power, a working part realizing its functions, and a transmission device effectively connecting the power and working parts. Then there was the control and operation part, and other auxiliary components. Making Luo Nan, a mediocre engineer apprentice, distinguish the marvelous design of this seamless mechanical structure was truly a difficult task. But with the flow of energy, Luo Nan was able to roughly determine where the energy was being transmitted, where the energy was being stored, and where the energy was being used. Luo Nan's mental senses immediately followed the coldness of the energy flow inside and out. He smoothed it out a few times, eliminating the components one by one. He gradually narrowed the range until he reached the westernmost side of Gear. This place was an atrium with a diameter of 12 meters and a depth of 50 meters. According to Luo Nan's perception, the layers of coldness of the energy flow had different sources, but in the end, they all accumulated and revolved here. Therefore, the drip, 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 drip was the clearest here. Luo Nan's soul body sank directly into the atrium area. He entered and sensed with the answer in mind. Sure enough, the psychic pressure of the flow of energy flow was a level higher than in other parts of the building. When Luo Nan's soul body cut in, the mental plane clearly rippled. It was like a stone thrown into a deep well. Luo Nan was able to confirm that the energy flow accumulated here was exquisite and subtle. And reality told him that if it weren't for the fact that his soul was in an out-of-body state, greatly increasing the precision of his senses, he probably wouldn't have been able to capture the changes within. But what happened after the energy flow accumulated and revolved? Why did Luo Nan have an impression of a deep well? It was because the atrium seemed to be lacking something relative to the amount of energy that had accumulated. It lacked the order to control the energy flow. It lacked the decisive element. Was it the external neuron? Or perhaps? Luo Nan floated in the atrium and pondered silently for a moment. Then he suddenly gave his soul body a boost. With his current abilities, doing the relevant boost was as easy as drinking cold water. The visualization diagram of a tetrahedron, an inscribed sphere, and an inscribed sphere immediately appeared in the void, wrapping the soul body within. When this diagram manifested in the atrium, Luo Nan discovered that the surrounding slightly cold energy flow was stirred. The flow of energy increased in speed. It passed through and coiled inside and outside the diagram, moving step by step. With a stirring pull, the accumulated energy flow became much more orderly, and it became much more solid, especially some scattered information. Because of this, they gathered together and gradually formed logic. There's a way. Luo Nan's senses toward the circulation of energy flow grew clearer and clearer. Luo Nan's mental senses were even painted with a smear of color. A slightly grayish glow gradually filled in. Luo Nan was no stranger to this. Chapter 352. The grayish-white radiance was a form of encouragement for Luo Nan. He couldn't help thinking, could it be that he didn't need the external neuron to reproduce the situation back then? Luo Nan wanted to know more, so his mental senses naturally expanded outwards. But he discovered in the next moment that his soul strength was being restrained. It was being restrained within the atrium. It was unable to break through the outer wall no matter what. It just spun within the atrium, its speed rapidly rising. Soul strength didn't have kinetic energy. Soul strength didn't count as a vector. These were matters on the philosophical level within the society. Luo Nan was unable to give an accurate definition. But whether it was a feeling or an illusion, his soul's strength undoubtedly displayed a similar state. This made him think of his junior high physics class. He had seen particle accelerators. Charged particles repeatedly accelerated within a vacuum electric field, accumulating more and more energy before finally achieving a bombardment. This was what Luo Nan felt right now. His soul strength was restrained in this manner. It spun, forming and enduring enormous waves of psychic pressure, each higher than the last. It was to the extent that he gradually lost precise perception of the material world. Instead, the structure of the mental plane was forced to emerge. 1,000 layers of curtains flew in the air. They warped with the rising psychic pressure. Those far away were pulled closer, and those near were thrown away. It looked like a chaotic mess. But for some unknown reason, after a few changes, the thousands of curtains actually interweaved into a relatively stable structure. No matter how much the mental plane warped, the main body rarely changed, even though it was still complex to the point of making one go crazy. This scene seems familiar. Stop. Luo Nan decisively gave up on analyzing. The deeper he went into understanding the mental plane, the more he realized the profoundness and difficulty within. There were practically no limits to it. It really could drain a person's energy dry. Right now, he really didn't have the spare mental energy to consider other directions. Luo Nan's soul strength had already been catalyzed to a certain limit after the continuous rotation of acceleration. Soon, his perception on the mental plane began to collapse. Then, even his perception of rotation and pressurization were lost. The corresponding thoughts were obliterated. It was like a skyscraper with its structural framework erased. It instantly collapsed and fell apart. Luo Nan suddenly sunk into a field of primal chaos. If one were to say that a bit of consciousness still remained in this situation, then it was probably just existence itself. The world came to a standstill. Then it exploded. There was an indescribable period of time. Perhaps it was a second. Perhaps it was an hour. Luo Nan was completely unaware of what had happened. By the time he regained his basic senses, he sensed that the feeble sense of existence that was left in him was expanding rapidly in the form of greed. All the senses and thinking abilities that he had lost earlier were being retrieved and digested again. As for the spiritual pressure that kept rising, it disappeared without a trace. His soul body also became light and clean, transparent from inside out. Everything was going back to normal, everything was getting better, but everything was different again. In fact, a brand new world had already appeared before Luo Nan's eyes. The grayish-white light appeared once again, and as a common base color, it outlined a blurry and boundless silhouette. When he looked closer, he saw layers of clouds, smoke, and ice crystals. Between the cracks of the clouds, there was a blood-red color flowing. It seemed that a raging fire was burning in the lower regions. Luo Nan stared at all of this. He spent some time to confirm that it wasn't an illusion. It wasn't a memory. It was a scene that happened in the present and was absorbed by his mental senses. This wasn't the first time he had seen a similar scene. Although the process last week was different, he still immersed himself in the scene. He went deep within and underwent a short, yet inconceivable journey through the clouds. Success. This was the place. Luo Nan wanted to raise his arms and shout, but unfortunately, this wasn't something that his soul body could do. He could only settle for the next best thing. He fiercely pounced forward to welcome the astral wind that was wrapped in ice particles in his memories. Wait the minute. Where was the wind? Luo Nan finally discovered an anomaly. He tried to control his soul body to penetrate deep into the endless layers of clouds in front of him. But no matter how much strength he exerted, he was unable to get even an inch closer. It was as if there was an incorporeal glass in front of him that split the two sides apart. Then another problem popped up. Luo Nan discovered that he was unable to enjoy the panoramic view of his soul body. Instead, he was restricted. It was similar to a bird's eye view. Combined with the feeling of the incorporeal glass, it was like sitting on an airplane. He was separated from the thick glass of the porthole to survey the boundless sea of clouds. If Luo Nan hadn't experienced this for the first time, he would probably praise the marvelous scene before his eyes. But there were no ifs in this world. There was only reality. This situation where he was stuck between a rock and a hard place was absolutely not what Luo Nan wanted. Moreover, this extended to a problem. He wasn't in the Atrium of Gears building right now. He hadn't moved into the cloud world. Then, where was he? Luo Nan felt an irresistible repulsive force as soon as this thought arose. This force wasn't polite at all. It slammed him down from his position that was infinitely close to the cloud world. Then the world spun around him, and he could not help but shout. By the time he came back to his senses, the world had returned to its most ordinary appearance. He returned to the Atrium of Gears building. It's really... Motherf asterisk cur. Luo Nan forcibly erased the dirty words and thoughts in between. He had nothing to say when faced with his mother's masterpiece. He could only sulk with himself. He returned to the normal world, and his panoramic senses returned as well. They covered the interior and exterior of Gear, and the relevant structure of the atrium, the gathering energy, and all of it were incorporated into his clairvoyance. Did he become obedient now? Luo Nen gritted his teeth in hatred. He was driven by his emotions, and the range of his mental senses simply exploded once more. He had broken free from the restraints of the atrium, and he was no longer isolated by the barrier. A retaliatory rebound was a matter of course. The feelers of his mental senses extended 15 kilometers in the blink of an eye, and they extended to a 20-kilometer radius. They easily covered Acumen College, and they even included the building complex of Cloud City Water Village. They even included most of the large living district. When Luo Nen woke up from his own emotions, he was immediately stupefied. This wasn't his directional clairvoyance from Ocean Sky Cloud City. This was an omnidirectional radiation. A 20-kilometer radius was an area of over 1,000 square kilometers. The entire Pingjiang district wasn't this big. There was also the enormous space between heaven and earth. Even if it was a simplified version of the life sketches that only involved information related to living beings, the terrifying amount of information was still an astronomical figure. There was an instant when Luo Nen thought that he was about to explode. He used all of his strength to restrain his out-of-control mental senses to reduce the impact. But soon, the latest feedback arrived. It seemed to be very illusory. Chapter 353. His mental senses covered an area of over 1,000 square kilometers. At the same time, he drew the life sketches of hundreds of thousands of living beings. He projected 1 trillion stars. The range and level of his senses were outstanding. He could not determine the limits of his soul body's endurance. However, the first impression Luo Nen got was far from perfect. He could not help but think, could it be that formatting theory was stimulated by studying here with his mother? Could it be that formatting theory had an explosion of uncontrollable growth? Luo Nen knew that there were risks in the out-of-body state, but this extent of expansion and this explosive rhythm far exceeded his expectations. Even if he had the external neuron to prop up the God gear, even if his liver energy was leaking and the body gear was constantly rotating, his fleshly body might not be able to support it. He did not dare to stay in the atrium for long. He immediately soared up. However, he felt a subtle feeling when he intersected with the residual energy that had yet to dissipate. A thought suddenly popped up in his mind. It seemed that the changes in his soul body were quite large this time. The details of his mental senses were abnormal. They far exceeded any of his previous experiences. Perhaps it was not just an increase in quantity. It involved other aspects. Unfortunately, the details were too many and too trivial. The feeling was fuzzy, and he was unable to make a judgment in a short amount of time. Luo Nen could not figure it out, so he did not force it. The appearance of a problem often led to other problems. Right now, he needed to return home as soon as possible. Putting aside the external neuron, he needed to confirm whether or not the structure of his body and soul had collapsed into imbalance once more. Luo Nan's thoughts spun in the gears, and he set foot on his return journey. He flew under the gloomy dawn sky, and his mental senses had long since covered the path back. Within his all-pervasive penetrative senses, skyscrapers were like gathering smoke. They were nearly nothingness. Luo Nen charged forward in a straight line. His flying soul was like a phantom, almost like a ghost. The more he did this, the more he felt that something was wrong. His soul's strength had certainly grown, but after a period of buffering, Luo Nen felt that the amount of growth was not as terrifying as it had been before. At most, the Wraith sign had hunted once and fed him back. After he achieved the body gear, there was room for this level of growth. But at the same time, the range of his senses, which constantly changed as he moved at high speed, became more substantial. Not only did it break through a radius of 20 kilometers, but it was even slowly growing. Where was the foundation of this growth? Luo Nan's mind was distracted, but his speed far exceeded when he came over. He only used 6 minutes in total, and he had yet to reach his limit. The situation at home did not change. After tossing and turning for most of the night, uncle and aunt did not know when they had fallen asleep. The house was very quiet. About a kilometer away, on the street of the community, the security guards stationed by the association were guarding the relevant surveillance equipment with bright eyes. However, whether it was the instruments or the security personnel, none of them had any reaction to Luo Nan's mind wandering. It wasn't that they were incompetent. Luo Nan was a target that moved within the polar domain of the abyss region the moment his soul left his body. Most B-rank powers would be blind even if they came. Luo Nan's soul body resided on the roof of his home. Below him, his peacefully sleeping body was like an enormous whirlpool. It had an instinctive attraction toward soul bodies. Luo Nan didn't go in right away when faced with this kind of attraction. He was a bit hesitant. If he wanted to test the growth of his soul strength, the endurance of his physical body would be a good touchstone. However, there was also a risk. If he couldn't fit it in, it wouldn't be considered a fatal crisis, but he could probably compete for the most hilarious homeless spot in the history of the association. Bai Xinyan, who had recently been suspended from her job, might be more than happy to stuff him back into the health pod. TSK. Luo Nan was dissatisfied with his own indecisiveness. He would be stabbed no matter what. He couldn't avoid it. What was he hesitating for? With a single thought, Luo Nan's soul body sank. His body froze, transforming into endless waves of soul strength. It rushed into the whirlpool formed by his body. It accurately locked onto the external neuron and poured into it in an orderly manner. When the external neuron was filled to the brim, it naturally overflowed, forming the image of an iceberg vast ocean. But with the external neuron as a frame, it wouldn't flood in disorder. And so the God Gear was formed. The pressure his body endured started from zero and continued to rise. On the bed, Luo Nan's eyelids moved slightly. He maintained a seemingly open state as he experienced the changes in the order frame. The pressure continued to rise like the scouring of a great tide. His God Gear and body gear were like water wheels. They rumbled and spun in the stream of water. Not only did they dissolve the frontal assault, they borrowed the force to transform and nourish the blessed land. It seemed like there was no problem. Luo Nan had been cultivating in the eye's orifice all this time, but the upper limit of what a mere orifice could bear was far from being able to fully utilize the power of the God Gear. He could only protect his lower limit, which was to ensure that the God Gear and body gear could mesh with each other and rotate in harmony. He had a lot to fear. But today, his liver energy was unblocked, and his orifice eye was clear to his internal organs. His lower limit had unconsciously increased by an enormous amount. The God Gear and body gear meshed and rotated, speeding up the circulation of his blood and energy. His consumption increased dramatically. But under the replenishment of his liver blood, it was like a charge. It nourished and grew, lasting for a long time. And once the body gear absorbed too much energy, the internal fire would grow strong, and the liver energy would naturally disperse to the fascia, the fingers, and the eye's orifice. It would accelerate their growth, recuperation, and tempering. Like this, the strength of his body seemed to increase. From this, it seemed that not only was there no problem, but his cultivation speed seemed to have increased. This was absolutely good news. Of course, the increase in his soul strength was still within a controllable range. This was even better news. Luo Nan finally confirmed that the uncontrollable growth of his soul body was just an illusion. But the explosive increase in the range of his mental senses was a fact.
Why?
He simply flipped over and sat up. He picked up the notebook on the bedside table, flipped to a blank page, and started writing and drawing. According to normal logic, doing the same work would achieve results several times greater than before. The entire process of doing work would naturally be more efficient, and the method of use would be improved. But the current situation was that every link of operation was exactly the same. What should be done was done. The only thing that changed was the soul body itself. But the factor of increment had already been eliminated. What remained was structure? Essence? What was the soul body? What form did the soul body exist in? Such questions far exceeded the scope of Luo Nan's research. Luo Nan had developed dozens of years of inner-world research, including thousands of years of history of civilization related to religion, philosophy, and mystic arts. Yet he was unable to come up with a comprehensive explanation that was sufficient to convince everyone. Luo Nan could not solve it. He could only set it aside and draw closer to reality. He needed to seize the moment and make another trip to Gear to verify the use of the external neuron. The external neuron. How do I bring it? Chapter 354. Reality proved Luo Nan's worries. When he used his habitual out-of-body method to pull out his soul body, the external neuron did not react at all. It continued to coil within his brain like a long snake of electricity. It had a calm feeling of, who cares where you go? I'm right here. But saying that the external neuron was completely uncontrollable would be an unfair accusation. When Luo Nan used the traditional method, a mere thought caused the external neuron to obediently change locations within his brain. The coiling electricity flickered and flickered, echoing from afar. See, I knew it wouldn't be easy. Luo Nan made a few strokes on his notebook. The problem still existed, but the concept in his mind grew clearer and clearer. The out-of-body state and the driving of thoughts seemed to be matters on the mental plane, but they weren't. According to the theories he had recently learned, the former was not necessary. The latter was actually a type of guiding energy with thoughts. He described the relationship between several elements in this way. The energy contained in the human body's functions was called vital energy. It flowed through the entire body like water. The external neuron was like a parasitic fish in the water. Luo Nan's thoughts were like a small pebble. His thoughts did not have the power to directly drive the external neuron, but they struck the water and created waves. They were enough to startle the fish, causing the external neuron to make changes. As for why the external neuron was able to accurately judge his thoughts, was it an intelligent judgment? Or was it a more subtle mechanism? Luo Nan was leaning towards the latter. From the looks of it, an interference force must exist on the mental plane and the material plane in order to drive the external neuron. Then I have no choice. Should I reverse the flow of my true energy? Luo Nan laughed to himself. The most effective method for him to realize interference force was the heart lantern of the eye's orifice, formed from the coupling of the God gear and body gear. Due to the overwhelming superiority of the God gear over the body gear, and due to the guidance of practical problems, Luo Nan had always exerted force from the mental plane to the material plane. Now, he had to make a great reversal. The order frame of his God gear and body gear coupling allowed him to adjust the direction of application. In theory, there were no obstacles at all. However, the initial operation had to be carried out within his own brain. For the sake of caution, he had a very strict control over the strength of his interference. The light of the heart lantern of the eye's orifice flickered. It no longer shone upon the outside world, nor did it penetrate his internal organs. Instead, it shone with the electric snake of the external neuron within his brain, gradually pouring warmth into it. The external neuron vibrated vigorously, crackling with electricity. It seemed a bit uncomfortable. Sometimes it coiled, and sometimes it stretched out. It was like a transformation of a heavenly dragon. It was marvelous beyond compare. If one did not consider the consequences, it would be like playing with a novel toy. It was very interesting. Luo Nan noticed that the shape of the neuron in the outside world was changing all the time, but its essential state did not change. It was still the core framework of the divine wheel. The structure of the iceberg ocean was powerful and heavy, yet stable and thick. Luo Nan had a question. Was the core of the God gear? Luo Nan didn't have a clear answer, but he had an indescribable comprehension. At least at this moment, the difference between the material and the mental wasn't that clear. He carefully experienced this feeling, strengthening the interference between the mental and material planes. The flame of the heart lantern in the eye's orifice soared, gradually turning into a furnace to burn and refine the real gold that was the external neuron. Fire. He did not know gear. Luo Nan had a similar feeling when he followed Gym Master Xiao's teachings to refine his life essence. Only by truly doing it could he receive certain information and brand certain imprints. Perhaps this principle could also be applied to the external neuron? In any case, Luo Nan was immersed in the process of smelting true gold. He completely forgot about the passage of time. Then, the Hexa ear began to push information, vibrating his eardrums and sending a clear notification. A brand new day had begun. Right now it was 4:55 in the morning. According to Luo Nan's daily routine, it was already time for morning exercises from now on. We're done for. Luo Nan suddenly woke up with a start. He smacked his head with his notebook. How come it's already this late? Why don't I burn it a little longer? Luo Nan suppressed the thought just as it arose. It was already time for the morning class. Gym Master Xiao had always strictly warned against disrupting the rhythm of the class due to a moment of rashness. He couldn't push it back either. Recently, he had been working and resting strictly according to the plan. The association's security measures were also based on this. Sudden changes would cause trouble for many people. Needless to say, his plan to explore gear a second time came to a premature end. Luo Nan couldn't help but feel depressed. He could only suppress his impulses and adjust his mind. He used his morning meditation to guide and sort out his weed-like emotions. After stumbling for a few minutes, the powerful force of inertia pushed him back on the right track. Luo Nan had 40 minutes of morning classes and a morning run that was several times the time. Luo Nan returned at 7. As usual, his uncle had already prepared breakfast and was waiting for him to start eating. In the living room, his aunt was fiddling with her wristband with her head down. She had put on some makeup, but she didn't look lethargic because she hadn't slept for half a night. When he saw Luo Nan return, he used his chin to point at Luo Nan. Your uncle has something to do today, so he'll be leaving a bit earlier. Keep up with the pace.
Oh.
Luo Nan responded. He couldn't help but ponder in his mind. How could he make his aunt and uncle feel at ease? They might have to trouble Secretary He for this. He went upstairs to wash up. When he reached the staircase, Mo Peng came over with a yawn. When he saw him, he gave a sleepy yawn and went downstairs. Mo Peng just brushed past Luo Nan when he thought of something. He let out a sigh and grabbed Luo Nan's shoulder. But when her palm cut across, her fingertips didn't even touch Luo Nan's clothes. Instead, she nearly pinched Luo Nan's shoulder. Why are you running so fast? Mo Peng complained loudly. It's because you're too fat. Luo Nan turned his head. Right now, his physical skills were still mediocre. They were worlds apart from Shuele and Cragburst, who had strengthened their fleshly bodies. But he had the support of the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. A little fatty like Mo Peng, who lacked training, really shouldn't even think about getting close to Luo Nan. Mo Peng used his thick finger to poke Luo Nan. Fine. You like the new and get tired of the old. You live off me while helping outsiders. You're just like this. It's a shame that I thought of you when I had good things to do. Luo Nan rolled his eyes at him and walked into the house. You're going too far. You hook up with that Leicester every day. Why don't you think about how long it's been since we brothers got together? Luo Nan had already entered the bedroom. He spoke casually. I'm at Acumen College. You're at 6th High. If you want to hook up with me, then skip class and come over. Mo Peng gave a thumbs up. Brother, you're a god in calculations. Luo Nan finally looked him straight in the eye. You. Skip class? Quiet. Quiet. Mo Peng jumped in fright. It must be known that his great mother was in the living room. He pushed Luo Nan inside. He originally wanted to talk about business, but when he saw the clean appearance of Luo Nan's bedroom, he could not help but ridicule. Perfectionist obsessive-compulsive disorder.
Pure.
Luo Nan was ready to kick this guy out. Mo Peng shrunk back. Let's talk business. Let's talk business. Have you received the compensation from Frost River Reality yet?
Huh.
It was last time in the city center. That mess happened. After that, they gave every customer who was present a member promotion compensation. Those who aren't members have membership. Those who were originally members have all been promoted by one level. In addition, they also gave luxurious gift bags and whatnot. Have you received it yet? From Luo Nan's perspective, Frost River reality did not represent any beautiful memories. He entered the bathroom to adjust the water temperature. He casually responded, "So what? So what? After a member gets promoted, their expenses will drop by at least 20%, okay? And they also give out coupons. If you reach 1,000, you get 800. Adding them together, it's almost free. It's most suitable for group activities." Luo Nan sneered. "Go if you have the guts. If you go to the police station again, just don't look for me." "The one in the city center. I'm definitely not in the mood. But near your school is the Cloud City Water Village. Didn't they open a branch recently? They claim to have the best equipment in the city. Brother, here's your chance to show off. Hey, what are you doing?" "Taking a shower. Clear the place." Luo Nan pushed Immerse outside. With his current strength, he could easily crush this sturdy brother of his. He directly pushed him out the door. Immerse still wanted to persuade him. "You do this every day. You run in the morning and you train. Even if you build a body of muscles, what's the use? You still need to go the social route. Only then will you have a chance to show off. Don't you understand? This is a get-together. I guarantee that I'll bring high-quality beauties from 6th High. You can't lose face to the Mo family and the Luo family. At the very least, you have to be equal. Let's talk about it when you can actually hook up. I'm in a hurry. Listen to me, brother. You don't have any friends. Mother will definitely be 1,000,000 times worried about you. You'll be a mama's baby for life." "Oh, an aunt's baby. Hey, think about that house in Blue Bay. You wanted to just sit there and eat dust?" Luo Nan always wanted to live alone. This wasn't a secret in his family. But the earthquake in September and the consecutive hospital visits last month had ruined his hopes. But Immerse didn't know that the main reason Luo Nan wished to be alone was to secretly make drugs. Right now, he no longer had the motivation to do so. Plus, he had offended more and more powers in succession. Even Luo Nan himself didn't know whether it was better to move out and attract firepower or to take care of his family nearby. Thinking too much about this sort of thing was really annoying. Luo Nan directly closed the door. He ignored Immerse's clamor outside and entered the bathroom to take a shower. Just as he stood under the shower head, the Hexa ear suddenly transmitted a message. The sender was Zhang Yingying. The message was very short. There were only 2 sentences. Be a bit more proactive. Don't let people look down on you. This message came out of nowhere. Luo Nan typed a question mark to reply, but the other party didn't reply. It seemed that she was still brooding over his words from yesterday. Luckily, there was a document attached to the message. Luo Nan took a hot shower as he browsed. This was an internal report Peony had given to the firm. It was undoubtedly related to the search for mutants. It could be seen that Peony had a more comprehensive grasp of the entire situation after a night of brewing. She had already proposed an extremely feasible plan of action. Luo Nan believed that he was unable to come up with this sort of plan. But this report was different from the one he had shared with the Cloud Space yesterday. This report was for the high-level members of the firm to read. Some of its contents were more sensitive. Chapter 355. At 7:15, Luo Nan hurriedly ate a few mouthfuls of rice. He took the pie and the cup of milk that his aunt had forced onto him and sat in his uncle's SUV. He displayed the extraordinary strength of a glutton. The car hadn't even driven out of the community when he finished eating the second half of his breakfast. He opened the car window and accurately threw the empty paper cup into the trash can on the roadside. His level of moving target practice was far beyond that of most people. Uncle Mo Hying shot a glance at him and closed the car window. "You're not guessing, right?"
How could that be?
"I didn't train in martial arts for nothing." Luo Nan still clearly remembered the scene of the 2 elders racking their brains at the head of the bed in the wee hours of the morning. He felt ashamed and subconsciously jested. "Look at my skill and accuracy. Uncle, take me to play with guns someday." I've forgotten where the doors of the shooting center face in the past few years.
Sure.
It's rare for you to ask. Mo Haiheng straightforwardly agreed. Then he seemed to ask casually, how have you been at school recently? I mean, have your social circles gotten a bit bigger? Luo Nan felt that his uncle's words had a deeper meaning. He responded with a few words, but he was worried that he would be too vague. It would be hard to gain the trust of others. He just so happened to have a matter on hand, so he changed his tone and spoke. He was also asking for guidance. Uncle, how do I cooperate with others? I recently had a club activity, so I formed a temporary team to do things together. I don't really understand how to do things properly. Mo Haiheng answered as he drove. Since it's a team, you need to understand your role in the team. You need to be the leader or the planner. You need to know your place as a technician or logistics. This answer was too perfunctory. Luo Nan wasn't very satisfied. This is from the standpoint of a team. That's right. Since it's a cooperation, of course we need to talk about the team. Luo Nan rolled his eyes. I want to work from a personal perspective. I want to know how to be respected in a team. Mo Haiheng looked at the road and didn't look at Luo Nan. He laughed and answered, the concept of respect is too vague. There's no universal standard. Everyone's role is different. Their expressions of respect will be different as well. A fellow who considers himself a leader may respect his subordinates as praise. But if the person he praises doesn't consider himself a subordinate, will he feel respected? That's true. So, if the environment is not formed, don't talk about the relationship in the environment. It can change at any time. For example, respect can be a reward, but it can also be a price. That temporary team of yours, we'll talk about it after it becomes a qualified team. Talking with an intellectual like his uncle was far too taxing on his brain cells. Luo Nan first shrank back. He half closed his eyes and looked again at Peony's evaluation in the internal report. Crow's professional level is unknown, and his initial judgment is that he's introverted. He's not good at communication and lacks initiative. It might be more appropriate to classify him as a support. There might be room for negotiation in future collaborations. This was his partner. The official operation hadn't even started yet, but she was already trying to seize power. What was even worse was that she was trying to bargain. Luo Nan admired Peony's eyesight and judgment, but this attitude inevitably made him feel uncomfortable. It also made him doubt Peony's structure. One had to know that this outsourcing was actually a compensation from Her Majesty, the Martial Empress. No matter what, she would not discount it. Peony's words instead proved that her position in the firm was relatively ordinary. She hadn't felt the boss's pulse. Wait a minute, this isn't like Peony's style. Luo Nan picked at her words and suddenly realized something. The so-called bargaining might not be to cut off the amount of money for the outsourcing. Instead, it was to settle down on future solicitations. If this was the case, then it was quite brilliant. At the very least, she could understand part of Her Majesty, the Martial Empress's intentions. Luo Nan still had to ask Hiween before he obtained an answer. Luo Nan felt mentally exhausted to be on the same team as this kind of person and to seize the upper hand. Mo Haiheng took the initiative to talk to him at this time. I have a general idea of what you're thinking. You feel that you need to have a goal or a paradigm when doing things. If you really don't know what to do, then learn from me. I feel that we are quite similar. See if we're suited to each other. Luo Nan immediately teared up. I was waiting for you to say this. I have a motto. Take a look. Mo Haiheng sent him a message. It was very short, only 8 words. Those who set up don't set up. Those who cross over don't do. Luo Nan was stunned. He had read the classics as a child, and he had recently followed Gym Master Xiao to learn classical martial arts. He had crammed in some relevant knowledge, and he recognized these words from the sacred text of Taoism. These 2 lines said that if one stands on tiptoe for the sake of looking into the distance, one will not be able to stand steadily. If one takes large strides for the sake of speed, one will not be able to walk very far. After these 2 lines, there was another line. Those who see themselves do not understand. Those who are self-righteous do not reveal themselves. Those who cut themselves down have no merit. Those who are self-conceited do not grow. And so on and so forth. The general meaning was that one cannot rely on frivolous and impetuous behavior. The deeper meaning was that one must retreat in order to advance. Well, this was indeed a style of doing things. It was quite compatible with his uncle's usual low-key words and actions.
But
the current situation was not like this. Mo Haiheng did not know that Luo Nan was entangled in his heart. He asked, "Do you understand?" "I understand." "Yes, uncle. Is there anything else?" "There is. For example, good deeds leave no trace. Good words leave no flaw." "I know." "Then there's also to know the male, to guard the female, to be the stream of the world. To know the white, to guard the black, to be the style of the world. To be the style of the world, to be eternally virtuous, to return to the limitless. Simplicity is a tool. The sage uses it as a commander. Therefore, the great system cannot be cut." Luo Nan was scared. He simply memorized the entire passage in one breath. There were at least 80 similar sentences in the Book of Taoism, if not 100. But this was really not what he needed. Mo Haiheng laughed loudly.
"Look.
You clearly know what you want to do. Why do you need to ask me?" Luo Nan knew that he had been played. He was left speechless for a time. Actually, he wasn't interested in any kind of method. He didn't need to suppress others. If he had a choice, he would quietly stay in a corner and refine his external neuron. He would carefully experience this process and see what kind of result he would obtain in the end. However, he needed to do some things in order to obtain this peace. This entanglement was not something that could be explained to outsiders. Mo Haiheng used his finger to draw circles on his temple. "Let me guess what you're thinking about. You want to do something, but you don't know if you can do it. So you want to find a successful paradigm, like a set of formulas. You want to throw all sorts of parameters into it and then you'll succeed?" Luo Nan made a sound. "Just for reference." Mo Haiheng nodded. He then shook his head and sighed. Nan, how old are you this year?" 16. "What a good age. When I was 16 years old, I knocked up a classmate's belly. My old man kicked me down the stairs. My mouth was broken from the fall." "Damn, this gossip." Luo Nan's chin smashed against his chest. He didn't close his mouth for a long time. Mo Haiheng's gaze was fixed in front of him. He smiled gently, as if he was recalling a youth that would never return. But in the end, his gaze was still on Luo Nan's body. "It seems that I haven't beaten you since you were 10 years old."
Right?
"It seems so. A child in his teens. Second puberty, and rebellious phase. What a wonderful period. You actually passed by just like that? Uncle, are you very disappointed that you didn't get the chance to beat me?" While Luo Nan was secretly ridiculing, new words poured into Luo Nan's ears. "Tell me, should I praise you for being mature for your age? Or should I worry that there are problems with your physical and mental development?" Luo Nan raised his head in surprise. He met Mo Haiheng's clear and cold gaze. He realized the serious attitude within. Humans have never been perfect creatures. The evolutionary history of this species is a history of trial and error. At most, they have decent luck. So, society is very cruel, but it always leaves some room for trial and error. This is especially true for young people. Your grandfather's societal format chart only lists students. There is a group of people who pay tuition fees within it. His uncle's words had a scholarly seriousness to them. Luo Nan was a bit flustered. He didn't know what attitude he should use to respond. In the end, he could only respond with grunts. Mo Haiheng seemed to be interrogating him. "Then, Nan, you tell me, why are you so stingy with your tuition fees? Are you prepared to press down on all the flaws and then lose everything in an even crueler stage?" Luo Nan didn't even have the strength to respond with grunts. He felt that his uncle today was completely different from usual. Perhaps last night's matter made his uncle think a bit more. Was his uncle probing his attitude right now? Luo Nan really wanted to say that it was a misunderstanding. There wasn't some inexplicable organization looking for him. But if he thought about it a bit more, the nature of the situation he was facing was more or less the same. Wasn't this a problem caused by Her Majesty Empress Wu's group of people? His mind spun a few times, and he finally came up with words with great difficulty. So, you're saying that I have to feel the stones and cross the river. You're saying that I have to fall down a few times? You guys are Uncle Wolf and Aunt Eagle, okay? Come on, I know that you don't like student activities, Uncle. Luo Nan did his best to disturb the atmosphere. He muttered, "Know the male and know the female. Know the white and know the black. Know the honor and know the disgrace. Suffering losses is a blessing. I know how to carry, okay?" Mo Haiheng looked at him calmly. In the end, he washed away all of his solemn and cold aura. He returned to his normal state and smiled. "I hope so. Oh, right. You need to keep your mouth shut about the matter I just told you. You don't really want me to beat you up, right?" Luo Nan blinked. "If you don't say it, then I need to have the courage to pay the tuition fees."
Ouch.
Mo Haiheng really did slap Luo Nan's ear. Of course, he didn't use any strength. Even if he did, he wouldn't be able to slap Luo Nan, who had the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. The interior of the car became lively. The autopilot system displayed its proper function. Luo Nan knew that some things had truly become different amidst the laughter. He needed to get used to this change. The car hadn't yet arrived at Acumen College. Far away in a certain park in the River Wu district, an enormous crow flapped its wings and took flight. It flew along the city's riverside greenery at a low altitude. The rubber band tied to the crow's leg vibrated slightly, transmitting real-time information to the crow. Chapter 356. In the driver's seat, Master Jean didn't change his gluttonous nature. He still held a bag of food in his hand, but this time he switched to a folk snack. It seemed to be donkey meat roast. 4 long and narrow pancakes were stacked together. The pancake and meat were thick. Master Jean just happened to take a bite when ink flew in. He bit through the oily red and yellow meat pancake, and the roast dregs and meat oil mixed into his beard. It was truly a mouthful. Luo Nan's senses were quite complicated when he saw this scene. He didn't know if he should be full or hungry. In contrast to Master Jean, Peony maintained absolute silence in the seat behind him. She held a book in her hands and was reading. It was a physical book that was rarely seen nowadays. It was a thin booklet. The printing was extremely exquisite, but it looked like it was frequently flipped through. The pages were curled up and looked old. Luo Nan sensed the book in passing. The words, "Mystic Dharmic Lotus Scripture," were written on the cover. He remembered that it was a Buddhist scripture. This was becoming more and more rare. Peony didn't have too much of a casual and charming attitude when she was reading. She sat upright, and her long and slender fingers lightly pinched the pages of the book. Ink crashed into the booklet with quite a bit of noise, but she didn't even raise her head. It wasn't arrogance. She was truly focused and serious. Luo Nan felt that the consciousness of the world was full of ridicule. First it was the date edging. Then it was the mystic Dharmic scripture. What was going on today? Was someone going to bring a Bible over later? Ink didn't waste any words after entering the booklet. The civilian SUV started up and entered the high-speed magnetic rail. It followed the signs and sped toward the city. It was leaving the city. According to the plan, today's topic was still a meeting, but it was an on-the-spot meeting. Trigate Security arranged for the entire team to investigate the infiltration of the mutants on the spot. They also introduced more detailed information. Peony closed the book after the car started up. She even added a bookmark. She looked like she cherished the book. Perhaps this book had extraordinary significance to her? Luo Nan put himself in Peony's shoes and made a guess. However, Peony clearly wasn't prepared to discuss Buddhist scriptures or private matters with him. Her gaze shifted to Ink, and her eyes hooked into a charming arc. "Crow, you nearly caused Mr. Ink to be late." The strange form of address and the corresponding person would make the heads of those unfamiliar with the team explode. Luo Nan thought of yesterday's small discussion regarding the form of address. That was the longest conversation they had yesterday. Perhaps Peony's preliminary judgment had largely originated from this? Luonan wasn't good at this sort of analysis, so he simply didn't care. He maintained his silence. Peony really did display quite the initiative. For the sake of increasing efficiency, we can change the team's mode of operation. For example, Mr. Ink can always be with me to avoid all kinds of unexpected and awkward situations. She didn't say what the awkward situations were, but Luonan could roughly imagine it. Peony asked again, "Does Mr. Ink need to recharge?"
Charge?
Luonan was stunned for a moment before he understood. Peony was inquiring about the mode of operation between him and Ink. He did not answer the question directly, but pretended a little. "If you don't mind, let it follow you for a few days. I'll be online anytime." Ink could also hear that the two were talking about it. Its pitch-black eyes looked at the slender figure in the back seat without blinking. "That's great." It seemed that Peony did not hear Luonan's tiny bit of malice. She just extended her hand and lightly patted Ink's grayish-white beak, teasing this giant among the crows. Then she said, "From the intelligence obtained yesterday, the target's main infiltration area is from the west of the River Wu district all the way to the outside of the main city district. The environment of the recycling stratum is even more complex. I plan to find a temporary residence in the River Wu district and conduct all-weather reconnaissance." Luonan immediately thought of his little nest in Blue Bay.
Fine.
Of course, he wouldn't contribute it. He didn't have Peony's outstanding ability to analyze intelligence. If he could keep his mouth shut, he would do his best to keep his mouth shut. He would only speak after he arrived at the site to investigate. The civilian SUV shuttled through the early morning traffic. It took roughly half an hour to pass through the River Wu district and the adjacent Forest Wall district. This was tantamount to driving out of the main city of Xia City, heading toward the Trigate district further west. According to the normal route calculations, it would take an hour to penetrate the outskirts of the wilderness along the highway of the satellite city. It would be a cinch to reach the Trigate district several dozen kilometers away. However, the actual situation was much more complex. It was impossible for the mutants that had infiltrated Xia City to advance along the highway. On the contrary, according to their instincts to seek good fortune and avoid calamity, it was more reasonable to detour around the heavily guarded main road of traffic. Not long after leaving the main city district, the civilian SUV left the main road. Its four wheels touched the ground, and it began its bumpy journey. Luonan had never seen such a bad road in his life. It was as if they had just passed through an air raid. There were craters everywhere. Old Jean, who was in the driver's seat, gripped the steering wheel and switched from autopilot to manual mode. Then he yawned, making it hard for the passengers to not feel complicated. Old Jean spoke a few words in the beginning, but most of the time he kept his mouth shut. He just filled his stomach in different ways. He was neither hot nor cold. He had the habit of clocking out and getting off work. Old Jean said that he was just a driver. Luonan didn't have any other requirements for a driver. He was just curious as to what the government of Xia City did for a living. This was a proper living area. He had been to the recycling stratum before, and the road conditions were much better than here. The two sides of the road had quite the style of the recycling stratum. There were low buildings scattered here and there. Many of them were temporary buildings, but they looked quite new. He could vaguely see children shuttling back and forth on the side of the road, laughing and playing. Luonan recalled the relevant information and confirmed that he was at the edge of the Trigate district. The Trigate district used to be the garrison of Xia City, and it had just been moved not long ago. The military was stationed all year round, making this place very different from the modern city. Traces of relocation could be seen everywhere. Someone contacted her through her wristband. "Hello, Miss Peony. I am Axel Thursday of Trigate Security. Please report your position." This fellow called Axel Thursday was an intelligence officer in the Trigate security operation team. He was also responsible for liaison work. He was responsible for explaining the information during yesterday's meeting. He was quite an astute person. Peony simply shared her position, and Axel Thursday quickly responded, "I see you guys." A large container transport vehicle parked on the side of the road lit up its lights as soon as Axel Thursday finished speaking. The pitch-black body of the vehicle started up, indicating for Luo, Nand, and the others to follow. The civilian SUVs were quite suitable for the surrounding environment. As for the Trigate security, military, and police transport vehicle, it was indeed convenient to transport equipment and personnel, but it was quite eye-catching here. The vehicle stopped by the side of the road, attracting the gazes of many people. After it started up, there were even children driving skateboards, small cars, and the like. They tailed along the way. It was quite lively, but it was also quite comical. The group of people passed through the inhabited area under this strange atmosphere and drove to a relatively spacious area. Vehicles of all sizes stopped. There was a highland not too far to the right. A reservoir was built there, and the vegetation was dense. Though it was already late autumn, the deep green color was quite pleasing to the eye from a distance. The door of the container opened, and the personnel of Trigate security jumped out with a clamor. Most of them had equipment in their hands, and they assembled it as soon as they landed. The interior of the enormous container was completely a modern command center. All sorts of instruments and equipment were perfectly arranged, and there were at least 30 people working inside. Intelligence Officer Axel Thursday walked out from the stream of people and walked toward the civilian SUV. Peony got out of the car as well. She extended a hand and shook his hand. Mr. Axel Thursday, Director Wu didn't come today? Axel Thursday had originally wanted to report this matter, but Peony beat him to it. His imposing manner unconsciously weakened, and the report turned into an explanation. Director Wu is participating in a last-minute meeting. He can't come, so he entrusted me to apologize to Miss Peony and Mr. Long 7. Long 7 is already here? Mr. Long 7 came a bit early. He said he was going to take a look at the reservoir.
Oh yeah.
Peony gazed into the distance, a faint smile on her face. She was dressed more or less the same as yesterday. She was dressed in a slim-fitting hunting attire, which suited her tall and slender figure the best. But this time, she didn't tie her hair into a ponytail. Her long hair was tied into a bun, and she used a wide-brimmed hat to hold it in place. The brim of the hat blocked her overly charming eyes, but the shadow that fell accentuated the contours of her face all the more. She was explosively handsome. Ink, who had just flown out of the car, had undoubtedly become a tool that served as a foil. The reservoir is the main point of our investigation. Intelligence Officer Axel Thursday had attended a lot of classes yesterday, so he unconsciously wanted to explain. Trigate District was originally a river. The largest freshwater river around Xia City passes through here and flows into the sea. It's just that during World War III, the military carried out a destructive project to prevent mutants from breaking through the defenses of the river. This project caused the river to change, and the water to dry up. Nowadays, it has already formed a low-lying area, but the underground water system is still extremely complex. We need to pay close attention to it. As he spoke, a 6- or 7-year-old brat suddenly moved in front of him. He opened his mouth and asked, "Are you guys here to attack the gangs?" All right. The children of the inhabited area had tailed them all the way, and they had finally arrived. They might be young, but they could tell that this side was the most attractive. Plus, there was a huge crow. It was very eye-catching, so they naturally gathered over. Gangs? It seemed that Peony was more interested in this topic than the history of Trigate District. Unfortunately, the impetuous brat was dragged away by his companions in the blink of an eye. He was strictly ordered not to speak any more nonsense. After that, the group of brats were only interested in the beautiful woman, the large car, and the crow. Not only did they forcefully crowd around, but they also wanted to take advantage of the situation. They climbed up the car, wanting to touch ink on the roof of the car. They forced the crow to fly into the air. Only then did they avoid being crippled by the claws of the devil. Very few children in the city are this wild. Peony's words seemed to have a deeper meaning, and Axel Thursday understood tacitly.
Yes.
They should be residents who migrated from the recycling stratum. It's said that a portion of naturalized vagrants have mixed in as well. Their social relationships are very complicated. It's also because the military didn't do a good job of handing over the defense. This area suddenly became a no man's land, and many people want to take advantage of the situation. Chapter 357. Today, Long Seven wore an outdoor leather jacket, short riding boots, and a checkered scarf around his neck. He was like a male model walking on the runway. He was very flirtatious, and together with Peony, they formed part of the operation team's attractiveness. However, he himself was quite professional. His entire body was covered in dust, and his leather jacket was stuck with spider webs. Clearly, he wasn't just going to the reservoir to take a look. Long Seven casually patted the dust off his jacket and asked, "Is the power of the gangs spreading faster than the government?" Axel Thursday didn't want to say anything, but Long Seven and Peony both stared at him. It looked like they were very interested in this topic, so he could only explain, "Do you see that road? It's the one that's been half repaired." When they left the city, people more or less noticed the old road that extended from the main city district. It was a two-way road with 12 lanes. It was very wide, but it was quite old. There were no high-speed magnetic tracks installed. The follow-up construction didn't keep up either. It still had a bit of shape when it extended from the city, but it was unknown where it started, but it was annihilated among the buildings. This road has a history of 30 years. It was originally designed as the main east-west road of Xia City, and it was connected to the war transport channel in the wilderness. But after superconducting technology became practical, the main road was laid out in the direction of the magnetic tracks, and this road became useless. Axel Thursday drew a dotted line on the digital map he had already projected, but its geographical location is still quite superior. Through this road, one can directly reach the recycling stratum of the River Wu district. Naturally, matters related to the underworld will be quite active there. Luo Nan recalled when he heard Axel Thursday say this. He had fought on this road before. It was that time with Jack. The gang was just a small interlude. Today's main goal was to discuss the next step of the operation. Actually, Luo Nan believed that Trigate Security would immediately begin their formal reconnaissance and search when he saw their posture. But whether it was Trigate Security, Peony, or Long Seven, they were more patient than he imagined. They continued to hold meetings. They held meetings in the old river, beside the reservoir, and in the inhabited area. One meeting followed another. Perhaps they never stopped. With great difficulty, the inhabited area came to an end. They followed the possible route of the target and gradually advanced toward the main city district. They could stop by the roadside at any time to conduct information collection and discussion. Perhaps from their perspective, this was a form of reconnaissance and search. Frankly speaking, Luo Nan was brimming with interest when he listened to the meeting yesterday afternoon. He was cautious and conscientious in the morning, but at noon, his patience began to plummet. At the end of the day, he was already used to using supernatural abilities to solve problems efficiently and directly. He kept a respectful distance from mathematical problems like models and probabilities. Yes, He Wayne had mentioned this tendency in her lectures. It was called extraordinary logic. This tendency was very common in the inner world. He just didn't expect that a rookie like him who had just joined would unconsciously be assimilated. When he looked at Peony and Seven Dragons again, he couldn't help but admire them. Of these two, one was an elite of the hidden indigo firm, and the other was a burner. They both belonged to the circle of the inner world, and it was unknown how they managed to overcome it. Luo Nan finally retreated in defeat. His mind completely returned to the campus, just in time for dinner. He and Shuele didn't have the same classes in the morning, so they only met up after class and went to eat together. Acumen College's lunch break was extremely short. Only by eating a bit faster could they squeeze out some rest time. Luo Nan and Shuele both had afternoon classes, so they were even more nervous. The two ate with their heads down. They only had the time to chat when they got on the tram that passed through the campus. Since it was lunchtime, Luo Nan talked about the matter of his eye orifice connecting last night. Shuele naturally didn't hesitate to praise him. Nanster, you really are godly. You've already reached a higher level in the internal refinement technique. Shuele was a bit emotional. Back then, I was just trying to make a living horse out of a dead horse. I wanted you to learn breathing techniques to reduce the pain. Who would have thought that you would advance by leaps and bounds like this? The gym master also said that you're the most diligent of all the students he has taught for so many years. Luo Nen laughed. I'm still thinking about what to do next. The gym master mentioned it before. Since we're starting from the eye's orifice, there's no harm in walking this path to the end. The so-called 7 orifices and 6 roots, the gate of life and death. The mysterious and the mysterious reflect each other's life. There are 9 orifices in the mysterious and 6 roots in the release. One focuses on life, and the other cultivates one's nature. Shuele said a few words that weren't very clear. Luo Nan had been diligently tutoring himself in this subject, so he understood the general meaning. Luo Nan wanted Luo Nan to put effort into cultivating his senses, moving from the eye's orifice to the ear's orifice, the tongue orifice, the mouth orifice, the nose orifice, and so on. He wanted to cultivate with the 9 orifices and 6 roots, to drive his internal organs, to cultivate his body, and to polish his nature. The gym master did mention it, but he only mentioned a few simple words. The specific steps and train of thought still require the gym master to personally write them out. Do you want to go tonight? Of course I want to go. I'll let the gym master evaluate me, so that I don't make a mistake. In other words, the time he spent exploring the secrets of gear would be pushed back. This wasn't the first time Luo Nan felt that he didn't have enough time, but this sort of feeling would become more frequent in the future. Shuele asked about the situation of the outsourcing business. He was more or less curious about this. Luo Nan picked a few interesting things to tell him, but he couldn't avoid mentioning the long suffering of the meeting. Shuele listened with a grimace. We don't understand the world of professionals. If it were me, I'd probably collapse a long time ago. Your business is a bit different from what I imagined it to be. When will you be able to make a name for yourself? God knows. Luo Nan felt very conflicted in his mind. Actually, he really hoped to obtain some knowledge from this and harvest some benefits. But when he truly delved deeper, he was unable to keep up with the progress. He was able to understand 70 to 80% of what was said yesterday afternoon, but he was only able to understand 50 to 60% this morning. The ratio in the afternoon would probably be even more miserable. He had to admit, the relevant knowledge structure is far too lacking when compared to these professionals. Zhang Yingying wants me to seize the initiative. Take the initiative, my ass. Nanster, I think you're wrong. Shuele shook his head over and over. The gym master said that the greatest taboo in cultivation is knowing half a thing. Piecemeal knowledge and opinionated logic, when combined together, is the road to death. If you can't keep up with your schoolwork, then you might as well not study at all. Therefore, the gym master's first task is to divide students into classes and grades. Teach students in accordance with their aptitude. Your current matter may not be that dangerous, but there's no point in listening to it any longer. I feel that what Sister Yingying said is quite correct. You should seize the initiative. How do I seize it?
Sweat.
How would I know? But I think that since Her Majesty Empress Wu has outsourced the business to you, no matter how much effort Sister Yingying has put into it, she will always have trust in you. If Her Majesty Empress Wu feels that you can do it, then there must be a way. Otherwise, wouldn't she be deliberately making things difficult for you? Shuele's words were unintentional, but Luo Nan was listening intently. His mind was immediately stirred. Her Majesty Empress Wu outsourced the business to him. This was her way of compensating him. There was no reason for her to deliberately make things difficult for him. Her Majesty Empress Wu wanted to give him Peony as a partner. Her Majesty Empress Wu wanted to fill in the gaps. Otherwise, even if she was in the mood to give it to him, Luo Nan wouldn't have the face to ask for it. All right, Luo Nan had to admit that the professional standard that Peony displayed had scared him. Using the other's strengths to attack his own weaknesses obviously put him at a disadvantage in every aspect. Shuelei said, "Actually, I feel that you've done quite well in the past. Back at Frost River Reality, Red Fox, Papercut, and the others went against you, but in the end, they were all convinced by you. Of course, there was also last week. We practically didn't help at all. You handled everything by yourself." Cough, I didn't. Don't be modest. I was chatting with Cragburst 2 days ago. He said that with that Devil Ray by your side, he could completely treat you as a B-rank power. Not to mention that heaven-defying pure sensing ability. Right now, your status in the Xia City branch is catching up to Old Man Yu of yesteryear. Hee. Old Man Yu didn't have 2 extraordinaries to back him up. Really? You've done quite well? Shuelei rolled his eyes. Let's not act cute with malice. Don't tell me you want me to praise you from the beginning? All right, I'm speaking the truth. I really agree with Cragburst's words. Your pure sensing ability is heaven-defying. I heard that Cat Eyes directly changed the direction of her abilities because of you. She's going to focus on long-range perception from now on. She's giving up on all-encompassing perception. Something like that happened? This was the first time Luo Nan heard of this. He blushed with shame for a time. In a certain sense, though Cat Eyes was his believer, this was an accident from start to finish. Cat Eyes was unwilling. Her emotions were unwilling. Luo Nan wasn't Nan Batian. He wouldn't force himself on her. Instead, he deliberately pulled apart the distance between him and Cat Eyes. Now it looked like he had pulled the distance a bit too far. All right, he was a bit distant from everyone. With the Hexaear, it was very convenient to communicate on the psychic wave network. Shuelei had entered the society a month later than him. Shuelei could chat, fart, and listen to gossip. Shuelei could do anything. Luo Nan was the type of person who didn't have access to information. Character. Shuelei didn't know of Luo Nan's rueful thoughts. He continued, "When we were chatting, I suspected that this ability of yours is still in the explosive growth stage. Every time you move, the number you obtain is different. Sister Ying said that when you were at Frost River Reality, your soul-attached state had an upper limit of 500 meters. When your soul and body are united, the limit of your senses is 80 meters. But last time at Ocean Sky Cloud City, I was on the 88th floor, and you were on the viewing platform. You were on the 142nd floor. There were 62 floors in between. That's nearly 300 meters. You should have been in the soul and body united state back then." Luo Nan chuckled. This is the benefit of following the gym master in cultivation. Shuelei loved to hear these words. He immediately grinned until his eyes couldn't be seen. "So, Nanster, you don't need to worry about anything. There's no need to worry at all. In the entirety of Xia City, not counting the 2 extraordinaries, there's no one who can compare to you in terms of all-encompassing senses." These words sounded very familiar. Luo Nan suddenly asked, "Did Ying look for you to be a lobbyist?" Shuelei's grin froze. Then he moved closer to Luo Nan with a fawning smile. "I just feel that Sister Ying's words are quite reasonable." I feel the same. Chapter 358. Luo Nan spoke very confidently. After all, most of it was just a joke. He wasn't in a rush to show off. Instead, he found a secluded place with Shuelei and earnestly finished his afternoon lesson. Only then did he return his attention to the marching team. Luo Nan's consciousness was attached to Ink's body. As expected, there was still a meeting going on over there. They just added a working meal. Peony and Long Seven both behaved very professionally, and Ink took the opportunity to display the important reason for its enormous body. It ate nearly a person's worth of food as a single bird. After lunch, the group of people had another meeting by the roadside. Ink was on the roof of the civilian SUV. The luggage rack was just right for its thick toes to grasp, so it stood steadily. It was just that his head was drooping, and he had already entered a half-asleep state. For birds, staying quiet for a long period of time, coupled with the effects of digestion, consumed considerable physical strength and energy. It more or less went against nature. Therefore, when Luo Nan's telepathic thoughts cut in, Ink quivered and cried out twice. It flapped its wings and flew without hesitation. In the blink of an eye, it flew under the radiant sun. Under the sunlight, Ink's black feathers were cool and refreshing. They trembled in the wind, suffused with a deep blue luster. It was actually a bit dazzling. The black shadow and the blazing sun fused together in a strange harmony, causing Intelligence Officer Axel, though, to click his tongue in wonder. Of course, he couldn't help but suspect that it was a bit funny. This crow is vigorous and mighty. It understands human nature. It can be called a divine steed. His voice fell, and Ink flapped its wings. It turned in a different direction and flew far away. Soon, it disappeared without a trace. Axel, though, grunted. He covered his eyes with his hand and looked at the sky. What's wrong? Peony didn't even raise her head. Don't mind it. Ink circled in the sky for a moment before finding its target. It slightly adjusted its direction, and soon it arrived above the old road that cut through the city. It flew along the road. Although he said he wanted to take the initiative, he didn't immediately give orders to the operations team. Luo Nan couldn't use methods as heavy as shame in a short time. His many years of experimental experience had forced him to develop a cautious personality. As long as his brain wasn't overheated, he didn't mind collecting a bit more data and information to use in his judgment. The operations team was doing similar things. Unfortunately, their fields were too different from Luo Nan's expertise. They couldn't be used by him. It was also thanks to Zhang Yingying's persuasion that he came to his senses in time. Otherwise, it would only be a waste of time if he kept following behind the operation team. Of course, the first thing Luo Nan needed to do before everything began was to test the upper and lower limits of Ink's abilities, especially the range of his perception. This was the fellow that made a living. He could not afford to make any mistakes. According to Luo Nan's experience, the sensing radius of the out-of-body state, the unity of body and soul, and the fulcrum of the believer were different by an order of magnitude. In other words, under the premise that his out-of-body senses could reach up to 20 kilometers, the limit of a normal fusion of spirit and body was 2 kilometers. For a believer like Ink, it should be around 200 meters. If he deliberately strengthened it, it would increase even further. However, based on past experience, Ink's brain capacity was probably not enough to process information that was too complicated. Packet loss and frame drop were very normal things, and it still needed some time to adjust. Truth be told, this was work that should have been done a few days ago. It was just that Luo Nan had too many things on hand, so he kept forgetting about it. He pushed it back until now. Let's test the upper limit first. The situation was a bit unexpected when Luo Nan actually did it. Where was the packet loss? It was as if a high-speed magnetic track had opened up between Luo Nan's main body and Ink. The relevant information did not need to be transferred at all. No, it seemed like there was no transmission process. The distance in space was warped for some reason. This feeling was strange and familiar. Luo Nan spent a bit of time to recall. He finally remembered with great difficulty that he had used the life sketches to draw the Star River in Frost River reality. He seemed to have used this method to pull the Wraith sign over. The Wraith sign evolved into a colosseum and fought with the human-faced arachnid raised by the Order of Justice. After all, the Wraith sign was a Darksider species. It was an existence that belonged to the mental plane. It made sense for it to be summoned. Ink had a material form. Could this peculiarity be reflected in the transmission of information? In any case, with the existence of this connection, the only factor that limited Ink's detection ability was the limit of its own capacity. This made things much easier. Ink was the most commonly used living test subject during Luo Nan's repeated experiments. Naturally, It had its miraculous aspects for it to be able to live safely until now. And in Luo Nan's formatting theory system, it had already leaped to the level of a staff member. Its connection with Luo Nan was even closer, and this further catalyzed its basic abilities. Luo Nan was itching to give it a try. Ink transformed into a shadow, sweeping past the buildings on both sides of the old-fashioned highway. From Luo Nan's perspective, Ink was like a scout released in a strategy game. The fog of war was peeled away everywhere it passed, revealing a passageway that was 200 to 300 meters wide. However, the scene of reality revealed was mostly illusory. What was more dazzling to the eye was the floating and changing constellations of stars and the river of stars. Luo Nan didn't have any clear thoughts right now. In any case, he just needed to display his specialty. His specialty wasn't just the all-encompassing perception that forced Cat Eyes to change her profession. Just this matter alone, he felt that the starry sky constructed from the life sketches should be more suitable. Right now, a small starry sky was opened up with ink at the center. It resonated with the hazy star river that his main body sensed from a distance, covering the existence of all living beings within this range. Luo Nan feared that his clairvoyance would be insufficient. He honestly scanned the composition of each group of stars one by one, not wanting to miss a single detail. Peony didn't contact him during this period of time. He simply scanned the entire way at a speed of around 80 kilometers per hour. But after scanning for half the afternoon, the school's society activities were about to begin. Luo Nan reckoned that he was about to fly back to the main city district, but he didn't find anything. Luo Nan began to feel the difficulty of this task. He didn't have a particularly clear train of thought for the time being, so he could only work hard. A scanning radius of 200 to 300 meters was already the best in Xia City, but it was still too clumsy in the face of the enormous city district and suburbs of Xia City. Ink's sensing radius is still too small. Should I switch to my main body? A special sensation suddenly flickered while he was pondering. Luo Nan was overjoyed. It didn't matter if it was the target or not. His attention was instantly focused on it. A speck of bright light fell beneath the starry sky constructed from the life sketches, imprinting itself onto the star atlas. The surrounding scenery materialized layer by layer, revealing the concrete scene. Luo Nan sighed when he truly saw it. He was greatly disappointed. This should be the recycling stratum of the Forest Wall district. It was a place where people gathered. The target he had just scanned wasn't a mutant, but a middle-aged man. He wore a rather special robe, a bit like child's robe. It was light gray in color, and it looked very simple. The middle-aged man was located in a sealed house. The area wasn't large, but the decorations were filled with a ritualistic feeling. He stood in front of the stage like a priest, reading the teachings of scripture to others. Luo Nan's overly anxious gaze was too close to the material plane, triggering quite a bit of activity. The middle-aged man seemed to sense something, and his head tilted a bit. He was a bit confused. Luo Nan immediately thought of a secret order when he saw this scene. This place really did seem like a religious site. Oh, so it was an ability user. The Explorers Society of Xia City, the Order, the government, the military, the financial groups, and so on. The number of ability users didn't even reach 2,000. It wasn't too many, but it wasn't too few either. Luo Nan had randomly bumped into one. Should he say that his luck was good or bad? That's right. The difference between ability users and normal people on the life sketches level was far too great. Oh my, he was really stupid. Luo Nan, who was at school, slapped his forehead. Ink's flying wings nearly curled up. Fortunately, it reacted midway through its descent and fiercely flapped its wings to recover its altitude. Luo Nan didn't even think for half the afternoon. The life sketches of ability users were already this special. Naturally, mutants were even more different. This was an obvious fact. He had come to a similar conclusion before, but he had actually wasted half the afternoon on this. Luo Nan was drunk on his own brain. Now that he had bumped into someone else's preaching scene, it was more or less Luo Nan's fault. He didn't want to complicate matters, so he wanted to unfollow them. But in the end, he subconsciously swept his gaze over and felt an indescribable familiarity. He focused his mind and saw a familiar face. Yes, he looked a bit familiar. He just saw him today. It was the same child who jumped out to ask the members of the action team if they were going to strike down gangs at the reservoir. This child looked to be 5 or 6 years old at most. He was quite eye-catching in the midst of a group of adults who were listening to the preaching. He was actually attending class here? Xia City's traditional political power was quite powerful. In terms of religious belief, they adopted the principle of minors should stay away. Adults should make their own choices. A little child running over from far away to listen to a priest's sermon was against the rules, even if he had parents following him. Luo Nan's thoughts just spun, but he didn't think too deeply about it. After all, it had nothing to do with him. But Luo Nan came to a realization when he saw this child. The distance he flew out seemed to be a bit too far. It was over an hour's journey. If something happened, he wouldn't be able to respond to Peony. He decided to go back the way he came. And at this time, the priest of some unknown religion announced the end of today's preaching class, perhaps due to his restless mind. The group of people withdrew from the room in an orderly manner. As for the child, he came out wrapped in the crowd. He lifted up an electric scooter from the side of the road and followed the old road to the west.
Huh?
He's alone. Luo Nan discovered something unreasonable. Moreover, the electric scooter the child was driving had clearly been modified. Using ink speed as a reference, the speed definitely exceeded 50 kilometers per hour. It would not be an exaggeration to say that the scooter was traveling as fast as lightning on this simple and unobstructed structure. Luo Nan broke into a cold sweat for the child as he watched. There weren't many cars on this abandoned old road, but as long as they dared to go on the road, they would more or less be related to gangs. They would run amok, seeking excitement. What the hell was the child doing? Luo Nan thought for a bit. They were going the same way anyway. Let's just follow. It was better to be safe than sorry. If something really did happen, Luo Nan would feel uneasy. Ink flew in the sky, but the child was completely unaware of it. He rode the scooter, gripped the handlebars, and sped along at high speeds. He was quite at ease. When there was a slope, he would even play a few tricks. He was like a living monkey. His ability to balance was quite strong. Luo Nan was a bit impressed. Chapter 359. The little monkey was quite young, but it was already a super player on this old-fashioned road. It was able to drive the simple and crude electric scooter to the effect of a high-horsepower motorcycle. Luo Nan followed it for a while and confirmed that there were no problems with the little fellow. He stopped staring at it all the time and went to study his own matters. He switched to clairvoyance, allowing the starry sky to be deep and the starlight to spread out. He only searched for special structures within. Of course, if he could see dark clouds that covered the starry sky, then it was definitely a big fish. But at this time, the enormous population base of Xia City revealed its astonishing influence to Luo Nan. The contrast between 200 million and 200 million was a ratio of 1 in 100,000. It was destined that ability users and mutants were not easy targets to see. Ink's clairvoyance had a radius of 200 meters. Even a professional like Cat Eyes would be ashamed to death. But in front of the metropolis of the present age, it was still not enough. Front, back, left, right, up, down, and down, the stars were more or less flowing and arranged. Their structures were all mediocre. They were generally similar, and normal people were still the overwhelming majority. No matter how dazzling the starlight was, looking at it for a long time would make one dizzy. The hazy star atlas and its complex structure were like a maze. Contact with it too much, and one would feel fear. Luo Nan really wanted to turn it off and not look at it, but when he considered that the target was alive and could move at any time, and that the star atlas was constantly changing, he could only grit his teeth and persevere. Perhaps it was because he had seen it too many times. He didn't know when, but he felt that there were some other laws and principles within the mediocre and repetitive star atlas. There existed a minuscule amount of brightness. Perhaps it was a misconception. At the very least, the little monkey down below had its own characteristics when he looked at it the entire way. But it was still a bit lacking when it came to clearly distinguishing it from the others. Ink had to take care of the little monkey's speed, so it took an hour and a half to fly back to its starting point. Peony's exploration had come to an end, and they had returned to the vicinity of the inhabited area from before. They had missed each other, so Ink could only go back and continue traveling with the little monkey. Fortunately, this kind of good deed that was hard to come by in return soon ended. The little monkey bumped into his companions in an open space outside the inhabited area, and they immediately joined in the playing army. Ink hovered in the air, taking in the situation below. Behind them, Luo-Nen felt a bit emotional. It was hard to tell the ages of these kids, but they were at least 5 or 6 years old. At this age, Luo-Nen was already attending early education institutions. He didn't have the chance to be this crazy. Speaking of which, the trend of early education was overwhelming, and almost no one was spared. The settlement area had become a paradise. This wildness and freedom did not seem like the style of the residents of the metropolis. It seemed that the rumors of naturalized vagrants mixed in were not groundless. From another perspective, after the little monkey joined his companions, the subtle difference on the corresponding star maps was magnified, but it was still not clear enough. Luo-Nen simply had Ink find a green belt and stop on a tree branch to observe from a close distance. There was probably no way out if he were to look everywhere. He might as well lock onto a limited number of targets and see if he could find some patterns and clues. He was going to draw an even more detailed life sketch for the little monkey and his companions and then examine the differences within. As soon as he figured out the direction, Ink was discovered by the group of sharp-eyed kids. That big crow from this morning. It wasn't just someone who shouted, but it immediately attracted a group of people to watch. There was even a kid who threw a stone, hoping to catch it in one go. This action immediately drew a reprimand. "What are you being impatient for? My dad has a net-shooting gun in his car. Let's catch it alive. We can use it to trade with that group of people later. We'll pay a high price." Sweat, this group of brats. Compared to his companions, the little monkey was quieter. He didn't respond, which comforted Luo-Nen. "You're not an ingrate. I didn't look after you in vain." But no matter what, one little monkey was no match for a dozen or so brats. Luo-Nen didn't want to be played as a target. He immediately flapped his wings and flew up. The group of kids became anxious upon seeing the situation. They had already treated Ink as a dish on their plate. They found it hard to accept seeing a cooked duck fly away. Rocks flew like rain amidst their shouts, but it was useless. The kid who volunteered to take the net-shooting gun moved quickly. His dad's car was right by the side of the road. The kid opened the trunk and took out the net-shooting gun. He took a look and was about to pull the trigger. He didn't know why, but he suddenly felt dizzy. His feet were in a mess. The ground was like a wave, rippling back and forth. He pulled the trigger, but he didn't know where the gun was pointed. "It's an earthquake! It's an earthquake!" In the past month, the frequency of earthquakes in Xia City had decreased. Most people were familiar with this feeling, but the people who stayed in the temporary inhabited area were still very sensitive due to the strength of the buildings, especially when the feeling was so intense right now. Some children's legs even went soft and they fell to the ground. A few adults who were watching the excitement from the side of the road were flustered by the children's shouts, but most of them were still baffled. Earthquake? They didn't feel anything. Of course they didn't feel anything. This was because Luo-Nen had used Ink to release an attack on the mental plane. It was only targeted at the group of kids. The magnitude of the attack was actually very slight. It wouldn't hurt anyone. It was just that their reactions were slow and their minds were dazed. Ink flew high into the sky, leaving behind a pile of chicken feathers. This represented the end of today's search operation. Luo-Nen's plan to seize the initiative and amaze the world with a brilliant feat didn't come to fruition in the end. it was still the same. $1 million business wasn't easy to do. It was the same even if it was compensation. After an entire day of torment, Luo Nen finally realized that there were many things in this world that couldn't be won in a single spurt of energy. His state of mind unconsciously calmed down quite a bit. Searching for mutants wasn't a particularly urgent matter for him. On the contrary, he was tossed around by the hazy, starry sky for a long time. That feeling of being clear, yet not clear, and having no direction at all was especially annoying. And so Luo Nen knew that he cared a bit more about formatting theory and cultivation itself. When night fell, he simply tossed ink to peony. He didn't have the leisure to go prying on people's privacy for the time being. Instead, he went with Shuelei to Divine Yu Gym in Boshan Building. It was said that Gym Master Xiao would be moving in a few days. Luo Nan believed that the gym was deserted, but he never expected to see the brightly lit front courtyard when he entered. There were many figures. They were the parents of students waiting outside the front courtyard practice field. Luo Nan was baffled. Aren't classes already suspended? It's the last class. The gym master feels that the progress of Foundation Class 5 just so happens to be stuck at a node. He wants to teach them for a few more days. It would be a lucky chance if there are students who are able to gain enlightenment. The classes for the next few days are all free. Oh, this was something that Gym Master Xiao was capable of doing. The classes were almost over by the time they arrived. They followed Shuelei's instructions and directly entered the practice field. They saw Gym Master Xiao. Luo Nen simply stood stupefied at the entrance. Chapter 360. Xiao Shenyu, who taught children, was very different from usual. He was completely different. The gloomy and cold expression that Luo Nan was most familiar with had flown off to God knows where. What Luo Nan saw was a middle-aged kindergarten teacher with a relaxed expression and a smile. His 4 limbs were on the ground, his body arched as he crawled. His figure was stretched, and his spine swayed. He was like a large lazy cat. A group of 7 or 8-year-old children were imitating him. They meowed happily, and they even developed new skills on their own. They flipped, rolled, pounced, and twisted. It was quite lively. Luo Nan was truly dumbfounded. Shuelei felt the need to explain. Cough. This is the cat form that the gym master created specifically for children. You might even be able to see the dog form in the future. It walks the path of the god of imagery. You know, the children in the city are more familiar with these 2 animals. It's easier for them to refer to. Really? Luo Nan was still a bit absent-minded. Shuelei understood what Luo Nan was thinking. He said, "The gym master has always been the most amiable to children. Back in the day, when I was in the basic class, it was like the spring breeze and rain. But when I transferred to the specialized class, I was personally taught. Oh my God." He felt nostalgic, and he grimaced in pain. He felt quite complicated. Xiao Shenyu had already seen them, but his reaction was very calm. It was impossible to see any misgivings about his image collapsing. He was still on the ground, leading the children to crawl in circles. They fully stretched their limbs and moved their joints. He even reminded them to control their breathing. The scene could be described as chaotic but orderly. It was under control from beginning to end. Xiao Shenyu practiced in this manner for another round before getting up. He signaled for Luo Nan and Shuelei to come over. The children were still dominating the field, playing crazily, practicing. Luo Nan and Shuelei carefully circled around the group of overly energetic little fellows and stood next to Xiao Shenyu. Gym Master Xiao's expression had indeed returned to its usual calm state. It was as if the lazy, relaxed, and carefree expression from before were all an illusion. Luo Nan wasn't stupid enough to take the initiative to mention it. He just obediently reported his recent cultivation progress. Xiao Shenyu asked a few details, confirming that Luo Nan's progress was real and effective. He didn't look surprised, just nodding. In the end, he said, "You've finished cultivating in the eye's orifice. Your progress is fast, and your foundation is solid. You should have talent. Continue cultivating along the path of the 9 orifices and 6 roots. There's no need to stick to the order.
Try everything.
Try everything? You'll only know if you've tried it yourself. Xiao didn't think there was much to say, so he brushed it aside and changed the topic to what he thought was more important. Start from the 6 roots and 9 orifices and sense the surroundings. Worldly thoughts are like a tide, which is very dangerous for cultivators. Therefore, true knowledge and clear vision is especially important. Knowing oneself is true. Knowing others is clear. Knowing others and knowing oneself cannot be biased. Actually, Luo Nan did not quite understand, but when he heard Xiao talk about understanding people, he could not help but think of the events that had tormented him for the entire afternoon. He could not help but ask, the people of the world seem to be thousands and thousands of different, but when it comes to the level of life, the myriad streams return to the origin. The differences are extremely small, and there are many things that seem right, yet are actually wrong. How in the world should we distinguish them? Xiao glanced at him and gently nodded in approval. When Luo Nan described his extraordinary cultivation progress just now, it was nothing more than this. We cultivators know ourselves and know others. We should start from 3 places: the root receptacle, the root nature, and the root trigger. These 3 things, whether it is teaching others or self-cultivation, must be seen clearly. Root receptacle, root nature, and root trigger? Luo Nan had a stupefied expression. This is the language of the Shurjia. It has been borrowed, but it has been slightly mutated. The so-called root is the root of growth. According to your words, it is the basic order frame of a person. Xiao had spoken to this point, and Luo Nan understood. As for the differences between the 3, the one that can hold objects is the tool. It is the quantity that can hold. The one that creates good and evil is the nature. It is the discrimination of direction. The one that moves appropriately is the trigger. It is the fate of receiving the law. Simply speaking, one must look at one's aptitude when looking at the future of cultivation. This is divided into talent, temperament, and destiny. Only by understanding all of these elements can one choose the most suitable technique for a person. Only then can one choose the most suitable person for a technique. Luo Nan felt that Xiao was not only teaching him how to cultivate, but he was also expounding on the teachings themselves. As a teacher, these were undoubtedly words that came from the bottom of Luo Nan's heart. It wasn't just Luo Nan. Even Xuelei pricked up his ears to listen carefully. There is an ancient saying that the path transforms the virtuous and the foolish. Let's not talk about the controversial points. Schools have different doctrines, and there are many differences in the disciples they accept. This is obvious. Most of these differences come from the root receptacle, the root nature, and the root trigger. The principles are easy to understand, but the important point is how to distinguish them in reality. Xuelei, you don't need to listen to what I'm about to say. Your root receptacle is thick, and your root nature is simple. The root trigger should be activated for a long time. What you need is a pure intent. There is no benefit in learning these techniques of reasoning. Xuelei shrunk his neck, and he immediately walked far away to act as a temporary instructor for the children. Luo Nan seemed to understand something. Xiao had actually treated Xuelei as a living example. He had demonstrated to Luo Nan how to distinguish and utilize the root receptacle, root nature, and root trigger. The results were naturally excellent. Luo Nan already had a bit of a plan in his mind. Listen carefully. Xiao gave Luo Nan another reminder. Then he imparted Luo Nan the specific techniques of distinguishing the tool, nature, and mechanism. This technique was actually a summary of experience. Aside from a keen and penetrating state of mind, one also needed a wealth of life experience to support it. Right now, Luo Nan had only learned the basic principles. He was still far from truly crossing the threshold. However, this bit of principle was already quite outstanding, especially the standard of clairvoyance and judgment. It pointed to the most profound and subtle level of the human body and mind. It vaguely corresponded to some of the problems in Luo Nan's formatting theory, especially this afternoon. Luo Nan felt his soul strength stir. He scratched his ears and cheeks for a time. He really wanted to return to the settlement in the Trigate district and stare at the little monkey and those wild little ghosts. He wanted to look at them in detail once more. Unfortunately, he was destined to be unable to do so tonight. Xiao Xinyu gave a rare warning to Luo Nan. He needed to make Luo Nan comprehend the marvels within. Speaking of this technique, I will teach you this technique tonight. I know that you have a thoughtful personality. You are suited to study and research. I also know that you have a deep and solid foundation. It is enough to bear the burden. You took the initiative to ask, and you seem to be pointing at something. You should have encountered a corresponding problem. It just so happens that you have the tool, nature, and mechanism at the same time. It is like the return of spring to the earth. It awakens and hibernates all living things. It is born naturally. Although its nature is soft, its nature is firm. The result should be pretty good. Luo Nan nodded fiercely. Now he somewhat understood the true meaning of the phrase, "If one hears the path in the morning, one can die in peace in the evening." Of course, it would be too much of an exaggeration to say that Luo Nan wanted to die. It would be best if he could happily verify it a few times. Chapter 361. He just so happened to hear Xiao Xinyu's words. He was very surprised. Gym Master, Nanster just opened one orifice. If you suddenly teach him so much, he might not be able to digest it. He might not have been able to in the past, but now there's no problem. The cultivation of the 9 orifices and 6 roots is nothing more than a dual cultivation of life and death. He has made progress in the cultivation of his nature arts, but the imbalance is still there. There's nothing wrong with advancing courageously in the aspect of life arts. In layman's terms, nature arts were the cultivation of the mental side, while life arts were the martial arts of the fleshly side. Luo Nan could understand these words, but what did made progress mean? It seemed to have nothing to do with the progress of the eye's orifice. Luo Nan had deep faith in Gym Master Xiao's insight due to his foundation in the art of dividing objects, nature, and mechanism. His thoughts turned, and he unconsciously thought of his special experience at Gear in the early hours of this morning. He was a bit distracted. Suddenly, his mind became alert. Someone was reaching over with a hand. He instinctively slid a shoulder, but it was useless. Gym Master Xiao pressed down on his shoulder and exerted a bit of force, indicating for him to change his posture. Crouching tiger form. Luo Nan hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he obediently knelt on the ground. He stretched his back forward and pressed his elbows. His legs naturally curled up, and he transformed into another big cat, but this time, he was sleeping. This movement was one of the Daoyin techniques he had learned. It was not difficult at all. Plus, after many days of practice, he had already connected with the will of the mind. When he assumed this posture, it naturally resonated with the true meaning of mimicry. He was like a fierce tiger taking a nap in its lair. It was tight yet not tight, loose yet not loose. Amidst the laziness was the tension of a king of beasts. It caused his mind and body to be in a marvelous state of relaxation and tension. Xiao Xinyu squatted down and pressed down lightly on Luo Nan's head. He spoke. Frankly speaking, Luo Nan was unable to hear what Xiao Xinyu said. He just felt that the vibrations of the sound waves did not seem to be transmitted through the air. Instead, they flowed along Xiao Xinyu's palm and seeped into his brain. They were like thunder. The sound of thunder entered his brain, stimulating the apertures of his head and face to vibrate. Then it spread to his entire body. The thunderous vibrations pushed forward layer by layer, causing the body chakra to shake first. The internal links were subdivided, the 9 apertures, the 5 zangs, and the 12 joints all resonated. The eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind all knew where they were. At this time, Luo Nan was able to clearly distinguish Xiao Xinyu's voice. The experience brought about by the thunderclap and the new knowledge involved had already become a kind of verification. It was tantamount to synchronizing memories between the body and the mind. In this way, the body gear constantly rotated, and the god gear corresponded with each other. They coupled and moved in unison, constantly correcting the details. Gradually, Luo Nan ignored Xiao Xinyu's words. His entire mind was focused on the fine adjustments of the frame of body and soul. He looked at how the blood, energy, and fluid transformed layer by layer between the internal organs. It was like flowing water in the mountains. It flowed and permeated above and below ground, between the cracks of soil and stone. When it reached a certain degree, Luo Nan's thoughts stirred slightly. He felt the vital energy of his heart, spleen, and stomach boil. His blood and energy flowed upwards. As for his brain and face, he felt a slight turn, and his mouth was suddenly filled with saliva. It was sweet and moist, as if he was drinking nectar. Combined with Xiao Xinyu's teachings, Luo Nan was clear on the direction of his next step. The orifice of the heart was the tongue. The orifice of the spleen was the mouth. Although the mouth and tongue were separated, they were actually one orifice. And in classical theory, the heart and spleen and stomach were said to be external and internal. Luo Nan had opened up the two organ systems of the heart and spleen at the same time. It looked like there was some truth to this. Before formatting theory had truly taken shape, Luo Nan had first developed the Appetite King skill. He could digest food and provide his body with sufficient energy. The function of the spleen and stomach was amazing. And ever since he started practicing martial arts, his body's blood and energy were vigorous and healthy. It was said that the heart governs the blood vessels, and it was suitable for the dispersal of the liver energy. Wasn't there a saying that wood feeds fire and fire feeds earth? In this way, the liver, heart, and spleen, these three systems were linked to each other. Whether it was the specific circulation of blood and energy, or the enigmatic promotion and suppression of the five elements, everything made sense. Luo Nan didn't delve too deeply into it. He paid more attention to experience when it came to the circulation of the body gear. He felt as if a pool of nectar had opened up in the root of his mouth and tongue. Saliva overflowed from time to time, sweet and nourishing. Then there was the heart, the spleen, and the stomach. It utilized the mechanism of the organs to transform external energy into internal energy, allowing the essence to be filled and solidified. His vital energy boiled and spread throughout his muscles and tendons. A thin layer of sweat appeared in the blink of an eye. It could be said that his blood and energy were unobstructed. Luo Nan had been in the crouching tiger stance for too long. There were some children on the training field who saw Luo Nan lying on his stomach. They thought that Luo Nan was just like them. They meowed and pounced over. Shuelei jumped in fright. He wanted to block Luo Nan, but he was blocked by Xiao Xinyu, who had gotten up. The child didn't know how to control his weight. He directly bumped into Luo Nan's body. Luo Nan was still in a state of subtle comprehension. He didn't move, but his body was soft, smooth, and pliable. It was as if he had no bones. Bumping into him didn't hurt at all. The child rubbed and rubbed, having fun. Quite a few people followed suit. They laughed and laughed as they crowded over. They treated Luo Nan like a large pillow. They pressed and bumped into him without stopping. If Luo Nan continued to comprehend at this time, he would really become an immortal. A low growl came from his throat, and his body stretched out like a sleeping tiger. He stretched his back, and his skin and muscles naturally shook with force. Hidden energy surged out. The children around him fell to the ground, but not a single one was injured. Luo Nan saw the ground full of laughing children, and his childishness was aroused. He rolled on the ground like a cat or a tiger. His forelimbs stretched out, and his muscles relaxed. He looked vivid and lifelike. The group of children went crazy. They screamed and pounced over when they saw Luo Nan. Xiao Xinyu finally called for them to stop. Luo Nan had been stimulated by an opportune moment. He was instantly enlightened, but his foundation wasn't firm. There was a risk of failure if he continued to play. Xiao Xinyu waited for Luo Nan to stand up before speaking to Shuelei. His muscles and tendons have all been nourished. From now on, he can practice fist techniques. Starting tomorrow, you will be training with him. Training with him the moment he comes up? Does he have the time to slowly learn fist techniques? Xiao Xinyu's lips curved into a mocking smile. He's just getting used to his physique and training his reactions. At most, he'll be able to learn a few moves of fist techniques. In any case, his ambition doesn't lie here. Shuelei looked at Luo Nan, and Luo Nan scratched his head. The gym master is amazing. From Luo Nan's perspective, the progress of his cultivation was manifested in his fleshly body and in the operation of the body gear. However, it was not easy for him to explain in detail. After all, there were far too many specious things in classical theory. He was just a dabbler in it, and he didn't fully understand many concepts. Most of them were instinctive actions and body memories. Tonight, what truly touched his soul was another set of knowledge that Gym Master Xiao had imparted to him. It was the theory of the root receptacle, the root nature, and the root trigger. This set of knowledge was like a clear boundary and outline. It made his mind feel much clearer all of a sudden. It was a bit like, that's right. It was like the feeling of drawing with a brush. When Luo Nan first learned how to sketch, he first learned how to use composition, lines, light, and shadow to sketch a lifelike image. He felt that he could draw the entire world. Of course, reality would teach him a lesson later on. However, he had just come into contact with a brand new domain. He had a clear feeling of understanding and talent. It was the most beautiful illusion in the world. If he could touch the ground, the feeling would become all the more vivid. Chapter 362. Gym Master Xiao's lecture time was not too long. He indicated that he had already taught Luo Nan everything that needed to be taught. The rest was up to Luo Nan to experience. Luo Nan wasn't in a hurry to leave. He and Shuelei sent off the students of Basic Class 5, then went to the backyard to help Gym Master Xiao clean up. He continued to pack his luggage, and he only left the Daguan at around 9 o'clock. Luo Nan and Shuelei separated in the underground parking lot of Boson Building. They sat in the security car sent by the society. The driver of the car was the same one from last night. His surname seemed to be Qin, but Luo Nan was unclear about his name. Neither of them were talkative people. They merely nodded at each other as a greeting. Luo Nan sat in the front passenger seat. His body leaned against the back of the seat, allowing the car to drive onto the highway. He closed his eyes and muttered to himself. Right now, Luo Nan's heart, liver, and spleen were driving the blood and energy of his entire body to rise and fall. The blood and energy soaked through the tendons, periosteum, muscles, and so on of his entire body. The blood and energy rose to his face. The eye's orifice was like a lamp, and the orifice of his mouth and tongue was like a jade pool. The blood and energy naturally coiled. It was marvelous beyond compare. However, Luo Nan was rarely touched by the various mysterious transformations on his body. At this moment, his mind was filled with the knowledge of the root receptacle, root nature, and root trigger. The flashing spiritual light seemed to mix with the dazzling starry sky in the afternoon, sketching out a novel structure before disappearing in the blink of an eye. It was both exciting and frustrating. Stop, stop, stop. Dojo Master Xiao had said that this sort of clairvoyance and judgment technique couldn't be done with empty guesses. They had to start from the real thing. The best way was to have a mutual understanding of the inside and the outside. That was to gain insight into oneself, observe others, gradually familiarize oneself, and find an evaluation principle that was most suitable for one's own logic. This sort of way of speaking faintly conformed with the concept of egoism in formatting theory. It suited Luo Nan's taste very well, and he didn't dare to be careless. So Luo Nan decided to dedicate all of his weekend time to seriously practice what he had learned tonight. Because of this, he had to postpone all of his schedule for the next 2 days. The current Luo Nan had a different status in the society. He had an entire security team by his side. If he were to suddenly change his itinerary, he would need to act as soon as possible to avoid inconveniences and accidents. He immediately contacted Huane. There was nothing to hide about this matter. He directly said that he had to rest at home and sort out his recent gains. Yuan naturally supported this. Luo Nan simply chatted a few words before hanging up. His mind calmed down a bit, and he began to make simple arrangements for his schedule for the next 2 days. On Saturday, he could hide in his bedroom and continue to familiarize himself with the 9 apertures and 6 roots homework. On the other hand, he could ponder the application of the root receptacle, root nature, and root trigger. For the rest of the time, he continued to burn and refine the external neuron to see if there was any progress. If he gained anything during this period, he would split his consciousness and send it to ink to verify it one by one. On Sunday, they would make adjustments according to the specific situation on Saturday. Just like that, these 2 days were filled to the brim and were extremely fulfilling. If everything went smoothly, when he arrived at school next Monday, he could use this opportunity to quietly explore the mysteries of gear. How wonderful! Luo Nan was very satisfied with his own arrangements. He immediately opened his notebook and made some simple tabulations before making some slight adjustments. After everything was settled, he heaved a sigh of relief and was in a good mood. He took the initiative to smile at the bodyguard driver beside him. "You've worked hard these past few days. I'll stay at home for the next 2 days. I hope everyone can relax." Driver Qin wasn't good with words. He was very steady. Luo Nan's time at the Daoguan wasn't easy to set. He waited in the underground parking lot for nearly an hour, but he was still calm and collected. He felt more reliable than old Jean of the hidden indigo firm. He just laughed at Luo Nan's words. He didn't respond. Just as the car was about to return to silence, Luo Nan's wristband vibrated. Someone was calling. Luo Nan looked at the caller ID and thought to himself, "This is really strange." Emoya's name was actually displayed on the screen. His older female cousin had gone to Man City for a month. She had gone crazy at the music festival, angering his aunt to the point of jumping like a corpse. Aside from Luo Nan being hospitalized twice in the middle of the month, which was too frightening for him, there was no news from her for most of the time. Why did she take the initiative to call him today? As soon as the call connected, Emoya bluntly asked, "Do you remember the favor you owe me? Did you know that I blocked a bullet for you?" Luo Nan nearly blurted it out, but in the end, he still asked, "What favor?" "I looked at your call log. September 26th, 7:18 in the afternoon. Do you remember?" "Forget it. In any case, you owe me a lot of favors. I don't care about this time. You just need to remember your promise to repay me. I want to use your house to prepare for the party." Luo Nan finally struggled out of the brilliant thoughts of the root receptacle, root nature, and root trigger. He really did obediently sweep his eyes over the call log. He did his best to recall for a few seconds and finally remembered. The night before he truly comprehended formatting theory, Emoya really did cover for him. Actually, there wasn't much meaning to it. Just the next day, he was brought home by his aunt. Luo Nan was disinclined to bicker with Emoya over these things.
Yeah.
"You said it before. I think it was in the middle of October. What time is it now?" "Oh, you stood me up because of the music festival." "That's right." Emoya had practically let go of everything for the sake of participating in the Man City Music Festival. She had been gone for an entire month. Naturally, she had missed out on everything. Emoya snorted coldly. "Haven't I arranged it now? I'll tell you that I'll be back around the 5th. There's a celebratory party on the same day. Don't be nervous. This has nothing to do with you. Naturally, my best friend will arrange it. You can vacate your house first." "I haven't been back for almost a month." Luo Nan grumbled. This was the truth. He had been running back and forth between the hospital and his aunt's house since October. His pharmaceutical equipment had probably already turned to dust. He didn't need pharmaceutical experiments right now, but he needed to properly arrange his grandfather's notes, relevant equipment, raw materials, and so on. Oh right. Octopus already had preliminary results. He was anxiously waiting for the contents of his grandfather's notes. He should give Octopus an explanation. Luo Nan pushed the boat along with the current. "Okay, I'll find some time to tidy things up. I'll contact you again." No need to smoke. Tomorrow is the weekend. Hurry up and get things done. Luo Nen nearly spat out a mouthful of blood. No way. Oh, so direct. Monday. I'll vacate Monday for you. Monday is the 5th. The 5th is Monday. Are you preparing to have us have a dust removal party? I have very important things to do over the weekend. Luo Nan bit down on the words very important and spat them out. He tried to make Emoya understand the seriousness of the matter. In terms of practicality, it was indeed very serious. He had just given Hiyuan a call. He wanted to cancel all of his travel arrangements for tomorrow. With Secretary He's efficiency, this matter would certainly have already been arranged. Now he wanted to turn around and eat it back. Not to mention his face, how would Hiyuan's authority be guaranteed? As for not following the plan and going out by himself, that was even more serious. It was tantamount to trampling Hiyuan's newly established rules into the ground. But there was no way to let Emoya know about this matter, let alone let her understand. Luo Nen just felt stifled. Emoya was silent for a moment. She spoke a few seconds later. Very important? A date? Luo Nen groaned. Sis, I'm not lying to you. Chapter 363. Luo Nen was a bit startled. He split his attention to look. Finally, he hadn't taken the Universal Commands course for nothing. He was immediately able to discern the meaning of this string of hand gestures. You can use the B time slot from tonight to tomorrow before the shift changes. The B time slot was from 5 to 7:30 in the morning. It was the time between the time Luo Nen woke up and the time before school. During this period, he had his routine morning classes, morning exercises, and breakfast. Chauffeur Chin's meaning was very clear. He was suggesting that he take advantage of this time to settle the matter. In any case, it was their team that was on duty from night to morning. Changing the mission at the last minute was not a big deal. Luo Nan's mind stirred. Tomorrow morning was not an option. His aunt's house was in the Nade district in the east. From there to the Riverwu district, he would have to pass through more than half of Xia City. But now, they had not even left the Riverwu district. If they made a sudden turn, they would arrive in at most 10 minutes. Over at Blue Bay Community, the most important things were pharmaceutical equipment, a portable cooler to store raw materials, and his grandfather's notes. They could be taken with them. As for cleaning up, screw her. Luo Nan changed his tone when his thoughts reached this point. How about this, sis? Let's pick up the pace. I happen to be in the Riverwu district, so there's no need for tomorrow. I'll go and clear the place now. Get your best friend here to take over. I'll give her an hour. That works too. I'll ask them. Luo Nan's train of thought opened up, and his mind became quite nimble. He continued to revise his plan. It's fine if she doesn't come over tonight. I'll change the security door to a secret key mode. I'll send it to you later. You can be the second passer, and everything will be fine. Very good. Emoya gave him a rare compliment. You went to Acumen College. Even though you've been to the hospital a lot, your brain capacity has grown. Is there any explanation here? Scram. Luo Nan hung up the call in a bad mood. He couldn't help feeling a bit awkward. He nodded toward Driver Chin and expressed his thanks. Brother Chin, it's all thanks to you today. Chauffeur Chin smiled and spoke for the first time tonight. Let's go next. Blue Bay Community. It was more or less the same as Luo Nan estimated. The security car only took 10 minutes to drive into the parking lot of Blue Bay Community. Chauffeur Chin abided by his duty as a bodyguard and got out of the car to walk with him. There were not many accidents in the world. At least tonight was normal. 2 minutes later, Luo Nan returned to the small nest he had been away from for over a month. This was the only real estate under his name. It was inherited from his father, who had gone missing. The cleaning party that Emoya mentioned was actually an exaggeration. With the AI butler in charge, even though he hadn't been back for more than a month, the house was still clean and tidy. There wasn't even a speck of dust in it. Emoya gave him a call as he was heading upstairs. Her best friend just happened to be unable to make it in time, so she directly used Luo Nan's secret passcode method. In this way, Luo Nan didn't plan on staying here for a long time. He walked straight to the study after entering and took out the three most crucial items: the black box on the desk, the portable cooler in the bookcase, and the brown leather notebook hidden in the secret compartment. The Luo Young and 10 years old. Luo of Medicine. By Luo Yi. Luo Chun Luan is 10. From Luo Nan of Dong Luan of Luo sect from Luo Nan. Luo Nan at 10 years old.
Young.
Young and young, even. From Nan of the education. From his.
On. From
He Chin Yang the young. Moya's financial support was one of the most important reasons why he was able to persevere for 5 years. Moya was right. He owed too many favors. But today's matter could not be considered a favor. Between siblings who didn't need favors. Luo Nan felt disturbed. The most fundamental problem was that he was getting further and further away from a normal family life. Luo Nan sighed and laughed. He wanted to pick up the 2 boxes, but Chauffeur Chin rushed ahead to do it for him. He had a strong physique. Carrying the 2 boxes was like picking up 2 stalks of rice straw. Thank you, Brother Chin. Luo Nan was a bit embarrassed. He had tried to snatch them away twice, so he could only let him. He held the most important brown leather notebook in his hand and placed it next to his own notebook. He looked around the room and covered it with his mental senses. After making sure that he did not miss anything, the 2 went downstairs. They didn't forget to set the door to the passcode mode and sent the electronic passcode to Moya. Sending the passcode wasn't troublesome. It was done in a matter of minutes. They entered the elevator just in time. Luo Nan let out a long sigh. One matter was finally resolved. No matter what Moya and her group of friends did, it had nothing to do with him. Chauffeur Chin maintained his silence as the elevator went down. It was a bit awkward to not do anything in this narrow space. Luo Nan flipped through his grandfather's notebook in passing. He looked at the familiar and complex molecular formulas, as well as the neatly scribbled handwriting. He had already crossed the threshold of formatting theory. He had a foundation in the internal refinement technique. His god gear and body gear were coupled and interacted. His soul strength advanced like a hurricane to an uncontrollable degree. His understanding of his mind and body was far from what it used to be. With these things as a foundation, he would look back at this notebook. Even though it was hard to say that he understood it, the level of thinking, the angle, and the methods were much richer. He could more or less understand his grandfather's train of thought. It seemed that the entire notebook talked about how to use molecular targeting drugs to realize the activation of specific nerve cells, to realize their self-growth and differentiation, to build new or strengthen nerve circuits, to influence the development of the body's organs, and to finally form a self-format. But this notebook was just an experimental record. The relevant theoretical basis was scattered and messy. It was impossible to form a complete system even after many attempts of sorting it out. The most complete theoretical overview was actually just a set of diagrams and words on the title page. Luo Nan flipped to the title page and saw the neat hand-drawn diagram and the scribbled handwriting. The visualization diagram formed by the tetrahedron, inscribed sphere, and circumscribed sphere had already fused into his soul. As for my heart is a prison, my heart is a furnace. As for the 16 words, my heart is a prison, my heart is a furnace. They were always together with his breathing. He had already reached this step, but Luo Nan was still far from truly understanding formatting theory. He was still unable to ascertain what kind of image and meaning formatting theory, as well as this set of diagrams and words, would have in the eyes of his grandfather, in the eyes of his mother, and in the eyes of that person. However, he suddenly had a thought in his mind. My current method of viewing the world is already very different from that of an ordinary person. Logically speaking, my grandfather and the others should be the same. At the very least, they should be very close. I didn't have this ability before. Perhaps I should look at the notebook from this angle again? You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.